none of this matters because it's in the same jurisdiction. The word lawful and legal, this does not matter. You can't ask for something lawful from a legal entity because they don't have to give it to you. That's what the law is about, is prescribing exactly what they have to give to you. Now, what they have to give to you can be lawful, because if it doesn't say, a tulip that's, double color or two colors, it just says tulip, well, that's lawful to give them. If they're legally required to produce a tulip, it's lawful to give them a two-color tulip. And so legal and lawful, it's just one of those things people get hung up on, like, oh, well, I'm lawful. I don't deal in legal. And that's just simply not true. Some of these most basic principles.
Well, let's go back to this whole thing out there in the movement. We need to get back to the common law. Like, the common law is this really great thing.
Yeah, let's start there.
The common law is not as great as people think. The common law is not fixed. The common law is fluid. What is common?
It's called case law.
Well, it's not just called case law. Case law is part of it, yes. But also there's an unwritten law that's called common law, and that is the law of nature, okay? But what is common law? What's common in California might not be common in Texas.
Bingo. Yep.
What is common law in the United States is definitely not common. See, people don't understand common law. They think common law is this magical thing that they have to go back to. No, the two best things out there is equity and contracts. How do you protect your rights? By contracts. And how do you do contracts? By learning the principles of how everything works and learning how to write.
Yep, and using a contract to protect or leverage your rights, titles, and interests.
That's right.
That's the key. That's what a contract does. Is it protects or leverages your rights, titles, and interests.
And what is and I've shared John Eric's video numerous times on the Honda contract for the purchase agreement for a Honda. And on the back of the contract, it says you're waiving your interest in the securities.
Isn't that amazing?
And it even says on the back that you agree to pay this note, and if you don't, then they have all the ability to come repo it by any means necessary, and that includes breaking into your property, which technically under the common law would be illegal, but under contract law it's not, because you have the right to waive your rights.
Yes, you have the right to be a slave.
So what would be the remedy before that? That would be to take the contract before you sign it and ask to have your lawyers look over it for 3 days and then go make a claim on it, or?
No.
That was confusing, whatever you said.
Where can
something
you make
stupid I heard.
You mean? Define what you mean by making a claim on it.
Yeah, what's that?
Just like if you were to make a claim on your birth certificate, going down and filing it.
But
yeah, what kind of a claim, though?
Yeah, but you can't make a claim on the birth certificate. It's not.
I mean, you could claim that you possess it. Is that what you're trying to say? You need to stand up and jump up and down and say, I claim that I possess this?
Right. So there's really no remedy beforehand. If you sign, then, there's really no way out.
Remedy for what? Hold on. Remedy for what? You're the one that's trespassing on a chattel. They're looking for remedy. You're the enemy.
So basically, all I would need to do, or if that were the case, then just be the agent and then pass it on to the principal, the responsibility.
Yeah, well, imagine this. Imagine you're waiting. You've got a business, right? And you got 10 people that you've done work for, and they're all holding a security. Okay, and they're refusing to cash it. They're refusing to process it. And down the pipeline, once they do process that security, then your interests in that security can be met. What happens if they never process that security? What happens to your interest?
It never fruits.
They never come to fruition. And that's exactly what you're doing to the Army. That's what you're doing to the military, is you're holding securities that they have interest in, and you're stopping the wellness,
Yes.
the course of the intercourse.
And that's why it made so much. This is why when you said the Army, this is why it made so much sense. After when I talked to Boris, when we found that book on the war powers from 1871, and we already know that we're not a party to the contract called the United States Constitution, right? So we're not a party to it. The terms of that contract are there. So you claim to be a U.S. citizen when you have no evidence that you are. You never applied to be one. They have no evidence you are, but you're running around here believing you are. So now you're trespassing on their chattel, and so what are they treating you as? One of the well-regulated militia? Oh, well, how do they regulate the militia? Regulations? See? These words matter. And I finally put it in that context the other day, and I'm like, now I understand what a well-regulated militia is. And since you're being conscripted into the militia to help fund the government and take care of it, because it is a symbiotic relationship, well, guess what? Because it's not your property, it's theirs, and you're running around here claiming to be that it's yours. How can they balance the books?
Yeah, you're helping the war debt when you turn these securities in perfected. You're helping the war effort. That's the key. And helping a war effort doesn't mean going to war. It doesn't mean starting a war. It means finishing a war.
So Henry Mandel, you tried to say something? I know he unmuted his mic a second ago.
Have any of y'all ever heard of the Jack in the Box W2 or W4 from Smoking Baby and Derek Gonzalez?
Yeah, I have. I actually watched the video, and some of the information in the video I support. But again, I don't support the W4.
Right. Because it's the wrong seat.
Yeah, that's crazy talk.
Yeah. I thought it was kind of outlandish.
Well, think about it. All W-2s, all W-4s, all 1099s are Class 5 gift and estate tax. Why? What's the estate? The Social Security Trust.
Yep.
And they were saying then to attach a 1040 to it. Well, what is a 1040? It's a Class 2. Now, originally they were saying sign the documents. Well, what are you doing when you sign them? You're committing perjury, because now you're affixing a Class 5 to a Class 2, and they don't go together.
But they're claiming to have remedy. I mean, they're claiming to have they've done it and it's worked. So they're lying, obviously.
I don't know. Some people claim to have remedy, but is everybody getting remedy? No.
No. Not even more than probably 10%.
Probably,
if they're getting it, probably by accident.
Possibly. When you start learning the principles of law, you don't need all these processes. You don't even need their statutes and codes. All you need is the principles. But nobody out there really teaches principles. They always concentrate on the processes. Principles of law are few and never changing. Methods are many and are fluid. You want an example of the methods are many and are fluid? Look at how many processes there are out there. Do my process. That's just nothing but a method. If you know the principles, you actually can develop your own process. And that's what it means to be in the private, not doing templates. I mean, I'm not against using templates. I mean, I like looking at templates, but I never copy them word for word. I might take a portion of it here and a portion of it there, but I'm going to modify at least at the minimum 20% of it. I might even modify half of it to fit my situation, to where you won't necessarily recognize it as the template. You'll see the pattern, you'll see the outline, you'll see where some of the ideas come from, but it ain't gonna look the same. Because when you send this stuff to the government, they scan it in and put it in their records. If you're doing a process from somebody a certain way, they're going to recognize it. They're going to know it. They're going to go look and say, oh, that's what this is. Oh, they did this guy's process. Oh, they did this guy's process. They probably don't know what they're doing. Let's test them and see. That's the problem. People are too busy worried about the processes instead of learning the rules.
Are you going to be including any of the right to travels and the passport principles in your workshops?
No, not necessarily at any specific time. No, I'm going to be going through what the roles are and how you should act accordingly, so you know how to do those things. If you're going to be the agent, you need to learn how to act like one. You need to learn the rules to one. You're going to run an LLC, you need to know how to manage it. You're going to run a trust, you're going to need to know how to manage it. And we're going to go line by line. Because, see, let me tell you, you know what the basis of the right to travel movement is? The basis is this: I own the car and I have a right to do with it what I want. Well, guess what? You're right, you might. But now you're accepting all the liability on top of that. Well, if the government mortgaged everything in 1993 with the agreement that they would be the obligor, why do you want to own it? Why do you want to do these things? Why not say, okay, it's not my obligation, it's yours. Here, slavery's illegal. It's not my responsibility, it's yours, but I'm retaining my interest in it. Trustees, take care of your debt. To me, that makes a lot more sense, because why? I can't take it with me when I die. You have to get this mindset out of your head that you want to own these things, because if you own it, then you're trespassing on the government's rights, because they technically mortgaged everything. And now you're also saying you're the liable party. Well, what do I not want? I don't want the liability. I just want the use and interest.
Yeah, that's what I want to.
Well, yes, that's correct, Susan, what you sent me. Being able to operate as agent majority means you start operating in your proper capacities correctly. You know how to contract, when not to contract. You know how to negotiate your own contracts. You're acting in honor. Yeah, and definitely a selfish, greedy people. And the SPC stuff, the only part I agree with on the SPC stuff is the trust part. I learned a lot on the trust law. But when it comes to the name, some of the processes in the SPC stuff are flat wrong. And trust me, I've done the secured party process. I'm not speaking from someone that hasn't done it.
Yeah, and I like Yusufel. I mean, he's a good speaker, so to speak.
Oh, I like him too.
Yeah.
I agree with about 90% of what he teaches and what he says. The only part I don't agree with is certain portions of the secured party creditor process. Because when it revolves around the name, who owns it, and what is your relationship to it, and what authority do you have to make certain decisions? Well, that's my name and they used it. Really? Do you have firsthand knowledge of that? Well, my mother gave it to me. Oh, that's hearsay. And on top of that, how do you know she gave it to you? There's 3 products of conception. Well, if there's 3 products of conception, the placenta, the umbilical cord, and the baby, how do you know which one she gave it to? You don't. Well, her intention. Well, by law, she would be incompetent, so her intention don't matter. The father's intention would matter, but guess what? We've been derelict in our duties as fathers. Because he would be the only person that would be competent during the process. But also, you got to look at the contracts that were signed before the birth certificate and birth event ever happened. See, there's so much at work there that people ain't even looking at.
Authenticating your birth certificate does that have to be done at any time?
I think it's a personal choice. Authentication doesn't do anything magical. Authentication is nothing but an evidentiary procedure. I've got a court case in my file section if you can find it. If not, I can go look it up. State v. Gray. The birth certificate and the certificate of live birth are both double hearsay. So what's the purpose of authentication? Now you're asking the court to take judicial notice that it is the record. The problem is you don't know what's in the record until you realize what it is, and it's not you. Now you can start articulating what the record is accordingly. But authentication, it doesn't matter what it is. All you're doing is asking the judge to not view it as hearsay. That's it. And we found that in Indiana in their rules of evidentiary procedure, And then I went and discovered that it's also in New York, but not so clearly defined. But I have not went and looked up the rest of the states because I don't need to. The principles are always there. You've heard of self-authenticating documents. Well, certain documents are self-authenticating. Certain documents are not. And what that is, it goes under rules of evidence. Is it hearsay or is it self-authenticating? If it's self-authenticating, then it meets the evidentiary requirement. If it does not meet that requirement, then you might need to get it authenticated. Well, hello, Goddess. I just saw you in here. Somebody knock that sign down. It says, be alert, possible snow. I am tired of snow.
You make it to Maine yet?
Maine? I'm not going to Maine. I'm going to Long Island.
Oh, okay, that's right. That's right. Supposed to be there
I
tomorrow.
am actually, yeah, be there tomorrow morning between 9 and 12, and I'm 82 miles into Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
So
I thought about.
Henry Mandel Hill Estate.
That's me. That's me. Yo, you on your way towards me right now. I'm in New York. I'm in Harlem, New York. You like right over there.
Okay. Now you unmuted your mic to ask a question a minute ago or say something.
Oh no, King. I'm just listening right now. No, I just yeah.
You go by another name because your name sounds your voice sounds familiar.
Oh no, my name is Drone. I'm known around the community.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, my name is Drone. You know what I'm saying? Listen to y'all every day. I mean, I'm implementing everything. I'm all the way up to the point to where I'm just, sometimes, you guys bring me up and then you bring me right back down. So I'm like, hold on. Like, y'all telling me I'm doing everything you said to do in reference to the, I got all the paperwork right here, notarized and everything, ready to go to the Attorney General, which is the custodian. Custodian.
The alien property custodian.
The alien property custodian. Yeah, that.
The Attorney General was the alien property custodian.
He's not now.
Anymore.
What?
No, the Secretary of the Treasury is the alien property custodian.
All right. Well, I said the Secretary of the Treasury, the security, a whole bunch of different documents. They never even responded. Now the Secretary of the Treasury is the property alien custodian now. So you mean to tell me all the stuff I just sent to the Attorney General telling them that I didn't want to be a part of the war, the peace treaty, and everything, all of that's supposed to go to the Secretary of the Treasury of Ohio?
No, not the Secretary. There is no Secretary of the Treasury of Ohio. There's only one Secretary of the Treasury, and that's the one in the United. That's one at the United States.
Okay? Oh, so that's who that's supposed to go to then.
Yeah, look.
And with my birth certificate and the certificate of live birth and everything, like I'm returning it to them, giving it to them with all that the oath, the whole 9 yards. I got it all right here with the stamps on it. Just the birth certificate authenticated on the state and federal level, and the birth certificate of live birth ready to go to the Attorney General. Now you saying don't send it to him, send it to the Secretary.
Now I don't know who told you to do that because I know I didn't. Okay.
I don't see any benefit of doing that. I don't know. Unless there is a benefit, I don't know.
So that's not us giving them the peace treaty and
now
getting up the war that we in and all of that. I'm sorry.
Peace treaty, I don't have a problem with that. But you got to notify all the right parties. Not just the Attorney General. The Attorney General is nothing more than the law firm for the president. Okay, so you're notifying the president, You're notifying the Secretary of State. You're notifying the Secretary of the Treasury. You're notifying the proper parties. Okay.
I want to write that down. Who all do I notify? All of that.
No, I can't tell you that's the only parties. I mean, I can't.
Okay.
I would have to go research historical parties that were involved in peace treaties, like start going through like the Treaty of Paris 1783. Who were the parties?
No,
Go look at the peace treaties with the Indians, because they're
no,
all online.
what I'm
See
trying
who
to say
the
is,
parties.
what I'm trying to say is, like, we're in the war. So and then, I also heard in the past, I listened to, like, the majority of every last one of the recordings that you had. And you also spoke about giving the peace treaty and returning the certificate of law birth along with the birth certificate, giving Caesar was back his and everything.
Yes, render to Caesar that which is Caesar's.
I'm just trying to figure out, King, who do I give it to? If you're saying that now is everything's changed, I don't know. Is my back at square one again, or am I not going to be able to?
I never said to send it to the Attorney General.
Oh, okay.
I said this. Me and Private Nobody actually do not agree on this. Am I going to say he's wrong? No. But, and he will tell you the same thing. He's not going to tell you I'm wrong. I think you have to analyze it for yourself. He has a process where he goes to the Secretary of State, because the Secretary of State in his mind is the top dog. Okay. Me personally, I say no. Go back to the biblical principle on what Jesus says about the foundation. If your foundation is built on sand, what happens? Your house is going to fall. Well, where's the foundation? Probate court.
Ooh, exactly.
That's what I tell people. That's what I'm working on.
So basically, all of these should be my attached documents for when I go to probate court to claim the estate.
Well, you don't claim it because it's never been yours to begin with.
There wasn't. I thought we was giving something by the Most High. We was giving the equity since the beginning.
Yes, you've been using it like it's yours, going out and creating all this chattel paper. Okay. Mm-hmm. So the purpose of it now is saying you start recognizing whose it is. Because who created Social Security? Wasn't that Congress?
Mm-hmm.
And what you create, you control? That's a maxim. So if it's their creation, and what was the reason for the creation of it? Well, the infant, which is not you, the infant was the placenta. The infant died. It died intestate because there was no will. So
that was the receipt. So the birth certificate is the receipt of that, which you got to return to them in order to get back your interest or the par value which belongs to you, right?
You say, look, go back and read the Declaration, the last paragraph. The Declaration of Independence is what you'd call it today. The Declaration is a trust indenture. It's a trust agreement. Because why? In the last paragraph, they told you what they put into the trust. They did all their honor, their fortunes, their property, everything for the what? The benefit of the United States. So it's a trust. Well, what do you got to do? The same thing. You keep the original copies, but you make color copies. Okay? And you say, look, here, you can even print off the A declaration that's in the file section. Sign your name to it. Put that as part of your paperwork. And say, here, I'm rendering this to Caesar to help stabilize my portion of the country.
Which declaration?
It's called A declaration. It even has the crown stamp on it.
Oh, continue your thought. That was beautiful right there. I didn't mean to interrupt that. I'm sorry.
So basically, you would take it to the probate and you would create your documents and say, here, but you've got to start appointing the right fiduciaries. Because now under the power of appointment, you start appointing the right offices to handle everything and take care of it. So I'm not going to tell you who to send it to on that part yet. I got to wait for this lady to call me back. I need to clarify things with her because she told me we were discussing this one day and we walked through it and I don't remember everything.
Yes, sir. Right on. We with you. You already know.
See, if that infant died and it was created before you were born, you got to stop calling it yours. It's theirs. It even says on the back of the social it's theirs. You can call your vital records and ask them who owns the record. They'll tell you the state does. Well, since it's illegal to own people, it can't be you. Unless you volunteer, you have that right. And nobody wants to do that. That looks right. Let's see, what did he send me? Let's see. He's not here, so I can't. That way I can answer his question. I'm going to tell you what, we really do complicate things. Our minds, the way they work, we have a hard time believing how easy it really is.
I agree.
Let's see.
So the trust that we would typically set up alongside the public trust would be the foreign grantor trust with a separate 98 number without using your social?
You can if you want. You don't have to.
Does it separate anything or do anything different?
You're already separate.
Yeah. What's the whole point of doing the foreign grantor trust?
It really depends on the person, on what your goals are for the future. Do you want to run a business? Do you want to do things and create your own way of life and get employees? Then yeah, you might need a trust. I mean, look, my friend David Roach, he don't do none of this stuff. And he has no plates, no license, no registration. Now, has
He has
he
a
fought
passport?
for? Nope. He's
No
not
passport
done
either.
any. He's not done a single one of these processes.
Yeah, because
Everybody's
a
chasing.
passport would be the property of the state or government as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So,
See,
I mean,
the problem with the process community is this. The majority of the people think if I file a certain document, it will fix everything and the government has to leave me alone. And that is a logical fallacy. And the number one people that actually act like that are those that are afraid. And fear is a sin. If you're afraid to go stand up for your rights in court, then you really should just continue doing what you've always done. But the minute you start figuring out who you are and how to say things in court, you start discovering how much power you really have. My buddy Mark in Minnesota, you've heard me talk to him. You've heard me talk about him. He settled a traffic ticket with grains of rice. Because why? He understands the monetary system. He had a 15-year sentence over his head. They tried to get him to take a plea. He said, let me see the plea. They would never show it to him. They just wanted him to agree to it. He said, no, let me see it. Then he looked at his court-appointed attorney and said, you need me to sign this and agree to it, don't you? She said, yeah. He said, thank you for admitting you do not work for me. He said, so I will accept the plea, but you have to give me lawful consideration. She said, okay, what's the consideration? He said, I walk out of here today. And sure enough, they dropped everything to some kind of petty misdemeanor, and he went home that day. See, simple contract. He negotiated his contract. Last year, he wrote a letter to the IRS. He knew how to write it. They sent him a letter, said he owed all these back taxes. He wrote a letter to the IRS, sent it to the agent, to the legal counsel, and to the commissioner. And he worded it in such a way that he pulled straight from the Constitution. He made sure the correct words had the capital letter. He used the correct phrase. He never used article blah, blah, blah. He just pulled the phrase and sent it to him. That was last June. They haven't even responded. It is not difficult to talk to these people when you know the principles. And if you know the principles, you no longer need to cite their codes and their statutes. What's up, JW? Buddy, old pal. I mean, I know you have heard me in the past talk about the ticket last year I got. I knew how the system was worked. 12 days before court, I called the clerk, had my conversation with her. She sealed and dismissed the record. I didn't claim ownership of anything. I said, hey, that's property of the United States. If I had to have went to court, I would have been able to prove it in court too.
What kind of citation was it?
It's a DOT ticket. I got put out of service. But it don't matter. It's all the same.
Overweight ticket or speeding or?
No. I had a bulb burned out on my tractor.
Oh, crap.
My reverse light was out, so he wrote me a ticket for that. I've had 2 tickets in 20 years of driving. One 7 years ago and one the other day, and I've beat both of them. I mean, the one last year, I mean. The first one, I went in and argued the case, and I had a stack of papers. I had the contract the state signed with the federal government for highway funds, and nothing in that contract gave them the authority to write tickets. So that means they were in violation of the supremacy clause. I argued void for vagueness, overreaching and overbroad constitutional principles. In court, the judge disagreed with me on the constitutional principles. Out of court, he told me I was 100% right. What told me right there that even the judges are trapped in a system. They're not always bad. It's the people that are calling them corrupt is because those people don't understand the system and they don't know how it's working.
You were able to talk to him after court to get his opinion.
Yeah, I did talk to him after court. He met me at my truck on his own volition.
That's respect right there.
That's what I say. I watched him. He was parked at the very back of the lot. And I watched him. He walked to his SUV, had his black robe over his arm, and he's just looking at me in my truck. Just looking at me. And I was on the phone with my wife, and I said, I wonder what the judge is thinking. And she said, what do you mean? I said, he's just sitting there looking at me. He's not even getting in his vehicle. She said, what do you mean? Are you in trouble? I said, no, we're done with court. I'm not in trouble. Then he got in his Jeep, got in his SUV and come right over to my truck. I said, hold on, honey. He's wanting to talk to me. Now, me, I'm not so prideful to think I have all the answers. So I said, look, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, he's a judge. Let's see if he'll teach me something. So I looked at him. I said, I shook his hand. I said, was I a little bit right? He laughed. He said, nope, you was 100% right on everything you said. That's why I tell people, don't do templates. You need to know this stuff because they're going to put you to the test to see if you know what you're talking about. Had a guy the other day, he read the book, the Gilbert's Law book I tell everybody to read. He's got an LLC. He's had an LLC for like over 10 years. He called me up, thanked me for getting him to read that book. He said, man, I did not know I could do all these things with my LLC that this book's telling me about. I said, now you can start changing your business structure. He said, darn right. And I'm going to. If you're not going to take the time to read and learn, you're never going to find out the power you have.
Yes, all LLCs should be set up instead of clicking LLC or whatever. It should be a business trust if you're going to, operate.
It don't have to be a business trust. I mean, the elite don't always use business trust. I mean, Amazon has one. It's registered with the SEC. But they also have corporations licensed in the states. Are they the same entity? No. The trust owns the property. The ones licensed are leasing from the trust. What you should do if you're going to do a business is you get you 2 LLCs. One owns the property that has the property in a trust. The other LLC is the one you appoint as trustee. Then you can start, the trustee can then branch off the trust and create other businesses, other LLCs. I mean, shoot, there are so many ways to make money out there. It's crazy.
So
All you
like in
gotta
my
do is have
case,
an
I have.
imagination.
So like in
You
my
have a
case,
what?
I have a construction. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
I said you haven't. You go ahead. You said you have what?
So in my situation, I have like a construction company called Remodel Plus,
Yeah.
and then it's its own LLC, just a basic, single member LLC, which is, and then I have Protect Installation, which is like a labor-based install service LLC. So basically, you
Yeah.
would want one of them to be the property, which would be like, so for instance, Remodel Plus. That would be
No.
the property. It wouldn't.
No.
How would you structure that?
All your equipment. If you've got trucks, you've got equipment, you've got places you're leasing to store equipment, or you own, you have a shop, you put that in one LLC. That LLC puts everything into a trust. Then your other LLC leases the property, the trucks, the equipment, the storage, whatever, from the trust. Now the LLC that's out in the public, everything is a write-off. See what I'm saying now?
That's pretty powerful.
And then if you put your LLCs in the right state, the government don't know who the owners are.
So even like in my situation where I already have two LLCs, single member, and going forward, I could set up two more different LLCs in the proper states, so I could, retain my identity or my privacy,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
put
Just
those
say,
single
just
member
say
LLCs inside of it, or
yeah,
just shut them down and dissolve it.
Well, that's your choice. I'm not going to
I
tell
mean,
you which way to go. That's
yeah.
your choice, because if you have already made a name for them, you could dissolve the LLCs and sell all the property to another LLC, right? You dissolve both of them, and then but you don't have to, because you can either leave them like they are, but sell them to the LLC that's going to be call it Miller Property Management. Okay. And then it puts all that property, the actual hard assets, the trucks, the equipment, the shop, all that stuff into a trust. Okay. And then those companies you've already established don't own any of the property. Okay. Now they lease it from the trust. Then you have another LLC that you appoint as trustee that does all the contracting with the other ones. And then let's say, for example, oh, now I've got a lot of employees and I need a way to manage those employees, or I need to make it easier for payment of salaries. Well, then go create you a new trust that does all the payroll. And as you create these other trusts and other businesses, now you've got another business that can offer services to other people. Because if you can think of what you need for your business, you can offer that same service to other businesses. All you got to have is an imagination.
You're not saving all your receipts, are you?
No, I don't.
Either. It's funny. I see this one guy, or I don't know if it's one guy, but several people, how they always send off every quarter, like they got mountains of receipts, and how they staple them together and they stamp it on the front, unconditional acceptance, and then yada yada yada, and then stamp it on the back and turn them in. And they claim to get tax credits, so to speak.
Well, show me evidence. A lot of people claim a lot of things, but guess what? Do they ever really show actual evidence?
Right. Yeah, I haven't seen it. And probably never will.
No, let's not going to say that. I mean, there are people out there that do get tax credits. Tax credits are money. And if you do things right, you probably could get tax credits back. But your average accountant, average CPA that you would normally use is not going to be the person to do that.
And you would also have to file in order to benefit for the tax credits, correct?
Correct.
If you don't file, then none of that applies.
I don't file, but here's the difference. I'm not running anything under an LLC. Okay. Knowing what I know about the trust, about the social, I don't have a problem using it anymore. But since I'm a truck driver, I don't have time to go send the bills every month to the trustees. So what am I going to do? I'm going to do my statements at the end of the year and say, hey, here's my accounting. Here's my statements. I issued this much credit. Now, as the general agent, since slavery is illegal, blah, 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 I need a reimbursement for my expenses. But I'm not going to do that till after I go to probate. I'm wanting to get the probate thing out of the way first. I have to pick and choose what I do and when I do it because of my job. I don't have time to write all the time.
And going to probate's a complex matter, isn't it?
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think it is. The infant is the decedent. It's a dead thing. They can't prove it's not me. They can't prove it is me because why? There's 3 products. It's even in their regulations. Okay, which one actually got recorded? Unless you're going to provide the record from Vital Records and from the probate court on that decedent to prove anything, well, what are we going to do? That means we're going to negotiate. Hey, here, it's your property. Do what you want with it. But I have an interest in this estate, and I'm retaining my equitable and reversionary interest. In other words, my rights of use and not the liability.
Have you gotten to seed in the state EIN or anything like that, Pastor?
No, because why? Got to have the appointment first, don't you?
Yes.
See, a lot of the people out there are doing things out of order. They'll say, oh, go get your executor EIN. Well, if you know the law, doesn't the executor have to be appointed first? And then you have to do an acceptance? So the IRS don't have the authority to do the appointment.
You do, don't you?
Why? You're not the trustee. The trustees have to make that decision, don't they? Or the court that is probating the estate. Where is your authority to make decisions for that trust?
Zero.
Did you create it? Yeah, zero. You didn't create it. You are not the trustees, and the beneficiaries, let's say you are a beneficiary. So what? The beneficiaries have no decision-making power.
So,
We never
Pastor,
notified. Sorry.
no, you're fine, Justin. I just want to clarify that because wouldn't you say, is it a fair statement to say that if people really want to know how to approach the whole trust aspect of the Social Security Administration and the decedent estate, is for them to spend time learning and understanding the functions of a trust to begin with, which most of us, myself included, have never been educated in. We've never learned about it. But wouldn't that be a good starting point in addition to agency?
I think it could not the first starting point. No.
No, not the first starting point, but once you get a grasp on agency, then going into that and
Yeah.
learning about it.
Yes, that I can see.
Okay.
That's the reason when I said that what we was on the workshops, I'm gonna go in order. We're gonna go through agency, and then we'll through partnerships, LLCs, and then trusts. So that way people can actually see the source information. They can see the citations. We can discuss it. People ask questions, all of that.
Well, we look forward to that. And is it something then that you will offer on a rotating basis?
Yes.
Where people who are, further down the road, once they come in, they'll need to start at point A and then work through all the different workshops, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Like a beginner, intermediary, and advanced level.
Well, you can look at it that way, but it's really just going to be what it is. I mean, I look at things simple. I look at it, if you look at what they say and don't put your meanings to it, it really becomes, the principles get to be very easy to understand. So, like, American jurisprudence and corpus juris secundum are some of your two best sources out there, because that's your legal encyclopedias with all the standing case law. So why not go through them? Well, what do I got access to? And I figure what I'm going to do is do it every other week. That way I can do my job and also have some time to rest. But if everything goes smooth, then I'll be able to park my truck and actually devote the time to it, and we'll go class by class through all of it. So anybody else got questions?
Quick question. You mentioned what law did you show the judge in court where they didn't have ticketing authority according to their own documentation?
If you're thinking that fits in every situation, you're wrong. But to answer your question, I am operating in commerce. This job is regulated by the FMCSA and the executive branch. Okay. So the states have a contract with the federal government to receive highway funds. Okay. And that means under the supremacy clause, the regulations are your top tier. And if the regulations don't mandate a ticket, the state can't. Now, if it's not regulated by federal, then the state can. And I will beat them over the head with that every time as long as I'm doing a federally regulated activity. That's why I tell people commerce is not this bad thing people make it out to be. It doesn't necessarily negate your rights. You just got to know how to articulate things and stand on them.
Similar to the local charters, it says the powers that they have, the powers that are granted, and that's all that they can do, correct?
Yep. That's it. So when you have a municipality that has a charter, then you go find their charter. That'll tell you what authority they have. Anything outside of authority is probably not accurate. And then that is all by contract on top of that. So that's why there's so much public policy, because public policy is by contract.
To look that up in Google, would we just Google FCMSA charter, or how would we look up the contract that they have with the states?
No, it's in Title 49, I think. Oh, Johnny D. I was wondering what he was asking in the group. but he didn't join the live. Next question. Hello, Lisa. Cameron.
How long have you been driving over the road?
April 1st will be 20 years.
Holy
Talk about
crap.
April Fool's Day.
I thought about getting my CDLs like about 15 years ago. And I remember when I drove back and forth in a car from Florida to Washington, and it seemed to take like 5 days. And I did that 3 times. And I was like, I don't know how truck drivers can drive, basically 7 days a week,
Not exactly. We have a 70-hour clock within 8 days. And each
But
day
you're always
we
on the road.
Each of those days, we have 11 hours to drive and a 14-hour clock.
Huh.
So, yeah, it's not exactly 7 days a week. If you run out of hours, you got to shut down for 34 hours.
Oh, wow. So you have to stay at a hotel somewhere, or you hopefully you
No,
can
I stay in my
gauge it
truck.
right. Oh, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah, I stay in my truck. I got a bed in my truck, and I got power. I got electricity in the truck because I got an inverter. I just perfectly fine being right here. I've been doing it for so long.
That's probably a good thing, though. They'll make you take a rest because you get really burnt out real quick.
Hey, they put us on electronic logs. People say, "How do you do it?" I said, "Really? It don't bother me. I don't have to kill myself to make a living.
Right.
I know how to keep my left door shut." Yesterday, I did 686 miles.
Mm-hmm.
My goal, if I'm on a long run, is 650 miles minimum in that 11 hours. I get out west where the speeds are 75 and 80. I can probably do a little over 7, maybe. It just depends.
I remember a couple of years ago when truckers were like getting like really low wages per mile or whatever compensation.
Well, that's what's going on now.
Oh, really?
God, yes.
I mean, fuel's expensive, the freight's low, and it's like, is it really? I mean, you're making good, or is it not as good as it used to be? Or?
No, 2021, I was making money hand over fist. 2022, somebody flipped a light switch and everything went to crap.
Yep, that's Biden for you.
Yep.
And
Freight
I'm sure you heard
rates,
about the banking thing with the Oklahoma.
Oh, it's a repeat of 1929 to 1933.
Yep.
I mean, go
but
look.
You see how Biden.
What did they go do before the Great Depression? They went out there and they leaked it into the media about the failing banks and bank runs and what happened. The people started running to the banks to get their money. And so what are they doing today?
I don't think the people got raped.
Thing.
Yeah. I don't think they got raped as bad as they are now. I think Biden's he's got that trophy for really killing us.
No, they got raped then too. The difference is during the Great Depression, you had 90% of the population that was agrarian, that growed their own foods. And we still had 7 million people die of starvation.
That's crazy.
Now we have about 10% of the population that is agrarian and growing their own foods. If we go into a Great Depression, what do you think it's going to be like this time?
Oh, it's going to be way higher. Nobody's hardly growing their own food.
No. And then the government's trying to outlaw growing your own food too. But that's where you got to beat them at their own game and know how the game is played so they can't stop you from growing your own stuff. That's why I teach the stuff I teach, so you know the rules of the game, and then the government can't stop you.
Now, what about the people that, for instance, I know the Montanas, Freemans, that they were a little aggressive, but there are some so-called cults that aren't really, or Amish people, I mean, they don't really mess with Amish people, but there are a group of people, sometimes, they have their own plantation or whatever, and they go in and just wipe them out with
Well, that's
absolutely no
because,
authority.
I know Waco, that happened. I get all that. And that, but what was the guy doing in Waco? Was he doing anything wrong? Not necessarily, but he was rubbing it in their face. He kept poking them in the eye. I mean, legally, was he in the right? Yes, they could have picked him up at any time. But you can't poke the bear but so many times before the bear eats you. I mean, go look at the Amish. The Amish live pretty much in the private. Do they get wiped out? No. But what do they not do? They don't keep poking the bear. See what I'm saying? That's the problem with these state national and American state national people. They keep thumbing their nose at the government, poking them in the eye, saying, you can't do this, you can't do that. And guess what's going to happen? They're going to get beat up because they don't respect the authority that the government does have. I mean, the government has rights too. You got to respect their rights if you want them to respect yours.
Yep.
Welcome back, Henry.
Thank you, my king.
Anybody got any questions? I know y'all been listening, so I know y'all got questions.
I've been trying to find my courthouse's EIN for a while, and I cannot locate it.
I call the county office for billing and accounting because they have it. Your county billing office, they have it.
All right, Monday morning, I'll try that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Just call them up. Make it sound something plausible. That don't tell them what you want it for. Yeah, I did that one time. I called the county executive office. No, I called the administrative office of the courts at the Capitol. And I said, and I asked for the EIN for one court. They gave it to me, no questions asked. But the other one they didn't have. And the clerk of that court emailed me and says, why do you need it? She didn't want to give it. I said, oh, I'm looking at submitting a bond, and I need to properly report it. She said, oh, if that's the case, here. She gave me the EIN and everything. I was like, cool.
That's how you ask.
You got to think like them in a way. I mean, when I talked to Vital Records on that recording, did I go and say that's not my name? That it's the straw man? I didn't do all that stuff. I just acted like it was mine and asked them questions accordingly. I said, wait a minute, you own it, but that's supposed to be mine, ain't it? Yeah, you get a little more flies with sugar than you do with salt.
I thought that was honey.
That too. So yeah, you ask the right person the right way, they'll bend over backwards to give you the information you want. I had to go find when I did the GSA bonds. in that family court case. I called the county executive office. I said, yes, I'm looking at issuing a contract, and I need to send a copy of it to risk management. Can you help me out? I need to know who the agent is and the address for risk management. Oh yeah, sure, no problem. They gave me what I needed. If it sounds like, if you ask them a question and it sounds like something they actually do on a regular basis, oh, they'll give you the information. But if you call the clerk and start asking at the court, oh, they're not going to give it to you half the time. Hello there, Mr. Bear.
Did you happen to hear that live with Floyd and the Buffy from Live to 5, and then this young lady came on with her husband? How they got stopped on the side of the road? They didn't have tags or any ID. They didn't want to ID themselves and stuff like that, and they had like a briefcase full of documents and stuff, and so they ended up beating the guy up and taking them both to jail and stealing all their documents.
Yeah. Nope, didn't hear about that.
And then they were talking about, somebody else was saying that they would have to go to the FTC and do a identity theft because pretty sure they stole the documents to create bonds, to find out.
I hope they didn't have, that wasn't their only copies of their documents, because if it was, they're screwed. You should keep your originals in a safe at the house, or keep them in a location, something. But, I mean, I don't know their full situation, but I've heard it numerous times from different people. And they go and they do some of this stuff, but they never notify the parties that, hey, we're coming into your jurisdiction. We are coming in peace. This is our documentation. We're letting you know who we are. See, the government doesn't know who you are. I mean, the analogy I give people lately is, when I've given it many times, think about it. You got two kingdoms, medieval times. One king wants to go visit the other king, right? What does he do? He sends a messenger first to announce his arrival. That way, when that king sees the army coming that's protecting that king, he doesn't go, oh no, we're at war and attack. Well, guess what you're doing? You're not announcing anything. So you're coming into their territory as an enemy, and they're treating you like one. I mean, if I talked to them, I'd actually ask them a lot of questions. How fast was you going? Was you speeding? Well, if you was, you gave them a reason to pull you over, because now you're a threat to public safety. My dad's step-grandson, you've heard me talk about my dad. He's got private plates on his vehicle. It says exempt on it. He's never been pulled over and ticketed for those plates. His step-grandson put him on his truck. Didn't even make it a month. He got pulled over and got 2 tickets. Why? He was doing 80 and a 65 and smoking a joint. So he got 2 tickets. One for the speeding and one for driving under the influence. So they didn't do nothing about the plates. They left him alone on the plates. But he gave him a reason to pull him over. He didn't act in honor. He wasn't thinking about the public. So you got to really know where you're operating in and what you're operating in if you want to do things right with and stay at peace. When people started doing that, they'd figure out the government's really not as bad as they make it out to be. Yes, there are corrupt people. Yes, the individuals may be corrupt. But, I mean, I'm not naive to think there ain't good old boy networks in these little small backwoods counties. Yes, there are. But does that mean they won't do business? No. Does that mean they won't do contracts? No. If you're going to protect your rights, you need to learn how to contract.
Did you
Pastor,
ever? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say thank you for your time, and thank you, Pastor, for your time. I'm hopping off, but I appreciate you hopping on here to give us some insight and wisdom as always. Thank you. Have a good night.
Well, Susan, I'm going to blow your email up in the next week or so.
That's fine. Just remember, my birthday is Wednesday, so don't be too hard on me on Wednesday, okay?
I will not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Did you ever follow up with Quasimodo on the reverse mortgage?
On the reverse mortgage?
Yeah, when he supposedly did a reverse mortgage on his birth certificate, I'm assuming.
No, he did not do a reverse mortgage.
Well, maybe I'm using the wrong words.
Yeah, he did an executor's deed and a mortgage-backed security and a few other things. But yeah, we talked. I don't know yet if I agree with every point he did, but some of it I do. I even talked to Boris about it, and Boris didn't necessarily agree with him. But when I explained the points I do agree with, Boris was like, okay, I can see your point there, because what does Boris say? Render unto Caesar. Well, what did he do? He kind of did that. He appointed certain trustees. Hello, Ms. RN, or Mr. Persistent.
Hello.
So, I mean, yeah, I thought what he did was actually kind of cool, but I'm undecided. I don't know how he worded everything and how he did it line by line. So I can't make a 100% judgment on it. I can see Boris's point that all he's doing is accepting certain liabilities the way he did it, is the way it appears. But does that mean you can't contract differently? Yeah, I think you can. But I do give credit to Quasi. He's smart. He reads their stuff a lot, like I do. Well, come on, car. Get on by me. I'm catching that truck way too fast. I swear, I think some of these truck drivers must be new. I mean, 55 and a 65. Come on now. Was you getting ready to say something, Henry? So, anybody else got any questions?
Well, I guess I'm gonna break out.
Okay. I will
Thanks
talk
for the
to you
chat.
later, sir. You're
All right,
welcome.
man. Stay safe.
I'm going to do my best.
All right, we'll talk to you after a while.
Bye.
Bye.
Hello there, Kamala. Good to see you again. So, if nobody else has got any more questions, I guess I'm gonna cut it short too.
Hey, Pastor, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
First of all, thanks. And the question is, because I'm dealing with basically two countries, U.S. and Australia, I'm trying to look up legislation regarding the trustees of the bankruptcy. You had chatted a bit with me before regarding Australia. It's very hard to find because it's so hidden in Australia. They want to make it look like there is no connection to the Fed. There's no connection other than some contracts with the IMF. And there's the Banking Act of 1959. But do you have any direction on how I could search of what that between the Federal Reserve Act, the Trading with the Enemy Act, any of these, and the Washington D.C. overlay, how that can be researched? I do know for a fact that Australia, the Commonwealth of Australia, all caps, is registered under Washington D.C. with the U.S. SDC. Every single address for Australia is located in the U.S. between California and D.C. Okay, so with prefacing that, what are your thoughts on other countries and how we can connect? Thank you. I yield.
I really don't know how to answer that because I don't know what goes on in Australia. I mean, you remember I gave you the example about the Library of Congress. And one of the things I tell people here is, look, if you got a question about law, write them a letter. They'll tell you. And so Australia, don't they have a parliament, or what do they call it over there?
Yes, it's Parliament.
Okay. Don't they have a parliamentary library?
I bet they do. It's very hard. I actually talked to a very knowledgeable lawyer who has investigated these types of things, and he even said that everything they say.
This parliamentary library is supposed to be public. Okay. So all you got to do is ask the librarian, say, look, I know that the United States has the Act of October 6, 1917, and just tell them, say, look, I'm just doing historical research. You don't have to tell them exactly what you're doing. Is it lying? No, you are doing historical research.
Right.
Just say, I'm doing historical research for a paper I'm working on, and write the parliamentary librarian a letter and says, the Trading with the Enemy Act in the United States, does Australia have an equivalent? And then wait for a response. Oh, well, the Social Security Act in the United States, they have trustees over that trust. What's the equivalent here? Okay. They're there to answer questions. You just got to learn how to ask them the right questions and ask it the right way.
Okay. Thank you. That helps me a lot. I'll go forward with that.
You're welcome, ma'am.
I have a question. What did you have for dinner?
I haven't. But what did I
Yeah.
have for lunch / breakfast?
Well,
Oh, I had a nice chicken salad. Then I had a steak and potatoes and mac and cheese. Does that count?
I guess.
That was my meal for the day. I eat one meal a day.
Yeah, I know. That's didn't know if you ate yet, which I'm
Oh,
assuming
yeah.
you had.
Oh, yeah,
Since it's
that's after I've had my coffee. And then when I finally had my DOT physical today, and after I got my physical done, I went to Applebee's
mm,
because it was out right outside the parking lot. So I said, I might as well eat while I'm here.
your workshop start. I got some questions.
Do I?
Said, when's your workshop start? I have some questions. I was doing some reading today, so.
Oh, it'll be, I'm looking at, right now I'm thinking April 1st. I just got to get it all written up and announced.
In what time frame? Like, or time?
Sometime after
Window.
lunch. Sometime after lunch, Eastern time.
Ugh. I'm dead 1 to 3, Monday through Friday.
It's a Saturday.
Oh, well, then I guess it'll be okay if you do it on a Saturday.
Good.
Good choice.
I'm looking at, right now I've been thinking 3 to 7, something like that, Saturday.
4 hours, man.
Yeah, I just don't do 1 or 2 hours. You should know that. I do a freaking 4-hour show on Floyd's thing every Thursday.
Yeah.
And sometimes run over. I have done a 6-hour show before. But no, I'm looking at a 4 hours on August 1st. I just got to get everything written up.
You're going to advertise on Floyd's show? Are you going to be a sponsor, sir?
Possibly. Oh, come on now. Don't be throwing rocks in my windshield. I really don't want to have to go call my aunt and say, hey, I need another windshield.
Did it snow for you at all? It was snowing here a little today. I know you went
Off and on.
Yesterday, so.
Yeah, off and on. Right now the roads are wet. It snowed earlier, but now it's not snowing. That was the freaking truck putting stuff on the road. So they don't do salt up here. They do dirt.
Oh, sand.
No, it's called dirt because it's got rocks.
Sand with rocks.
Yeah, it ain't the freaking nice beach sand that doesn't really do much but blast the paint job.
I think it's down south that they use the sand more.
Oh no, they use it up in Maine. I come out of Maine the other day, and my truck is normally white, and the trailer is too. But it wouldn't when I come out of Maine the other day. It was brown. It's like I'd run through a pasture of cow patties. I mean, it was that kind of brown. But I was glad it rained. I was like, it was nasty. Batman, so you had a question about that tax thing. What was your question? I just saw he joined.
To ask you, since you and Cite Your Authority will be doing your YouTube channels, are you looking to do like a 6 to 10 second maybe intro that will spice up the beginning of your live feeds or whatever you post to the internet so it looks nice and fancy?
I don't know. I used to think about those kind of things, and to me, it's just fluff. I think the information is more important. But I have
The reason why
Stand by.
I just got to have somebody that actually can do the video stuff for the intros and stuff like that.
reason why I ask is I'm in the video industry. I could do something like that if you wanted to trade for credits for your classes. I could do an intro for you. First, I'll show you what my work looks like, and then you could decide if you want something or not.
I'd have to look at your portfolio. Well, Batman, come on, and then fell off. There he is. There's Batman.
Howdy, y'all.
Batman.
Holy strawberries, Batman. We're in a jam.
No kidding. So what
No
was your
kidding.
question?
So here I get this I get that little lead in from somebody that runs around the way here. And I was like, son of a bitch. This whole thing of acting like, okay, you're being charged under criminal rules of procedure for this particular crime, blah, 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 blah. Come to find out, it ain't nothing but a tax issue. Come to find out, it's an infraction against the Department of Revenue, and you have been flogged and fleeced and hooskowed and flim-flammed and bamboozled into believing that you are standing before the man in guilt of a crime, which, of course, I knew from the very beginning, standing on my private property behind my fence of no trespassing with my gun on my hip in self-protection, trying to stop the theft of my truck by filling out a police report.
Yeah.
End up doing 3 years prison behind a felon in possession of a weapon on his private property in and affecting interstate commerce. Because I was stupid 22 years ago when I was in Texas and I had no idea who I was then. And I allowed a DA to corner me in a room by myself and threaten me on a duress and direct threat. And had me sign for a felony I never committed then either. So, thus destroying a 10-year exemplary military record in the process.
Oh,
so, yeah, it's easy. Good for them. Anyway, so here I am reading this shit today, and I'm like, motherfucker. So there's the presumption. I mean, in your eye hole, ear hole, whatever you want to call it, that they are just telling you that you owe a tax and you're going to debtor's prison.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think that by the Constitution,
I was talking to somebody the other day about it. He's got a case. He's trying to learn this law of agency stuff, and he goes and he's like, "Well, what do I do?" And I'm like, "Look, you're either going to read these books I tell you to read and get to where you're good at that and learn how to do it. And if you don't want to do that, you can also just write a letter to the DA and say, what's the tax on this? And settle the tax."
Well, you know what? That would have been really nice to even understand that there was stuff like that going on, because they never, ever tell you the jurisdiction and who's bringing this case, the claim, because
they don't
there's
have
no
to
victim.
tell you the
There's no victim.
jurisdiction.
And you know what they also do? You know, I know that. And you know what also they don't have to do is to tell you that the tax court, part of the IRS, is with the Attorney General initiating this with the DA of the district and telling them, you can't take anything less than this felony, and you must prosecute this as a tax debt under the guise of being a crime, that you will go with the sentencing guidelines that we put forth in like the busted with the feds book and
Well,
whatnot.
that's actually not true. I know that's what I mean. Yeah,
What it
the
says.
federal government's behind it, but yes, that's not all they can do. The problem is we don't know how to negotiate.
Well, shit, I wish I would have known the fact that there was a contract in the first place that I was being applied upon, because never
Well,
that would have ever happened. That would have never happened.
well, they were not after you to begin with. They were after the trust. But you thought it was you. The first words out of their mouth was that they called the name, and you thought it was you.
Oh shit, I wish that would have been the case. I was actually beating a case in the little county when I outlined the fact that I was standing on my property, filling out a police report to stop this girl from stealing my truck. And she had falsely accused me of this domestic that I ended up beating in the county because it was never true. And they called, because I beat them, they called the marshals and got them involved with this weapon that I had on my property, not committing a crime. And then they just kidnapped me from there and fleeced me up north to Denver. There was no chance of claiming anything. I wish there would have been.
Yeah, I know, but here's the thing. Look at the language they use. One, did the DA have firsthand knowledge? No. How many times did you object to his firsthand knowledge? You know what I'm saying? He didn't have any.
I do.
Okay, now, the other thing is, does the Constitution say anything about you have a right to bear firearms?
Sure, it doesn't. And do I ever admit to having a firearm? I have my self-protection on me.
No, you stick with the word arm. The Constitution says arms. It doesn't say firearms. I don't know what a firearm is. What is that? Turn around and ask them the question. See, that's the problem. We let these people put the words in front of us, and they let you agree, and you convict yourself.
It happens all the time, man. Because I mean, this is the same. This is like I was listening to the birth certificate originating thing you had on your Rumble. I was just there when I came back over. So this whole trust thing we have, thinking that, you know, as we learn through school and this indoctrination process, and that we have of this the 17 or 19 government services they provide for us, that it's for the people, by the people, and of the people, and that they are for our defense. Nobody's ever realizing that we were all deemed at birth to be the belligerent enemy combatant.
No, you wasn't.
Enemy. Oh yeah, 100%.
No, you wasn't. No, you wasn't.
That's what we are.
No, well, you are, yes, but you wasn't deemed that. It's your actions that put you there. Because why? You went and claimed to be a U.S. citizen. You claimed to be that name. You claim to be all of this stuff. So you're trespassing on their property. How can you be a U.S. citizen if you never applied for it?
I never paid my $10 import tax. I don't know about you.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying? So what happens, and it hit me. I had a conversation with Boris yesterday. We put that on YouTube. I got to still put it on Rumble. But, you know, Boris there at the end, you know, today it hit me. I said, wait a minute. Satan is the accuser. All he can do is accuse you. He needs you to convict yourself by agreeing to the words or letting your mouth get you in trouble.
Or even acknowledging that there is a controversy. It's over.
No, not necessarily. No.
That's why they struck being innocent off the plea. It's either guilty or not guilty. Well, that's a controversy. And the plea initiates the amount of tax on the crime.
Okay, sorry, my wife called.
How is she?
She's fine.
That's
I
good.
told her I would finish up here and call her back.
Right on.
But no, you end up convicting yourself because you agree their terms with no firsthand knowledge. For example, like one of the things I tell people, think about marijuana. You get a marijuana charge. How do you know it's marijuana? You don't. But then they come in and say, did you use marijuana? Oh, yes, you did. Well, guess what? You had no firsthand knowledge what that plant was. You didn't create it. All
Cannabis.
you know is no, you don't even know that.
Cannabis, that's what they call it.
I don't care what they call it. You don't know that. Okay? Did you create it? No,
I thought it
you
was
didn't.
tobacco, sir.
Huh?
I thought it was tobacco, sir.
Well, yeah, right. I mean, well, I wouldn't even use that term. I would say, look, Your Honor, I don't know what that is. All I know is that the Creator put a plant here on this earth for our benefit. That's all I know. I don't know what that is. So what do? We go in there and agree to their terms, and we convict ourselves. And then we get the attorneys to come in and represent us, or they give you a court-appointed attorney, and then they won't let you talk. And then it's the attorney does all the sly wordings agreeing to the terms of the contract. Oh, yes, it was marijuana, but he didn't do blah, blah, blah.
Yep, turning the man over to the jurisdiction of the fake court for the entity to pay the tax, thus getting warehoused as part of some type of remedy to the tax code, the Department of Revenue.
Yeah, but here's the thing you're not realizing. If that name is not your property and the trustees own it, what do? Send it to the freaking trustees and say, hey, your person has a debt that needs to be settled.
You know, that's the formulation of what we come to, and the reckoning of our truth is that we have to go to that point now, because what they're doing to us, it leaves us open for liable on something that we're not. And it is fraud in its originating instance, period.
No, it's not fraud.
Because it certainly is.
Hold on. No, it's not. They publish everything.
Yeah,
so
maybe but
it's not fraud. If you want to argue constructive fraud, I will agree with you. Constructive fraud has certain
I can understand
terms. That. Constructive fraud doesn't require the intent to commit fraud. When you call it fraud, you're saying every one of the government had the intention of defrauding the people, and you can't say that because you don't know the minds and hearts of every one of the person. Is there some in government that are corrupt? Yes. The government as a whole, no. Okay. Now, can you argue constructive fraud? Yes. Constructive fraud does not require the intent to commit fraud. Okay. The court then has to review the contract to see if fraud was built into the contract. So then you can argue constructive fraud. I did that on a traffic
by admission
ticket.
or omission, right? By admission or omission.
Well, it can be many ways. The language could be constructive fraud itself.
Certainly.
Okay, so I did that on a traffic ticket, that one with the mud flap. I went to traffic court. And, you know, at the time, not knowing what I know now, I was still going to stand on my rights. And then we go to traffic court. About halfway through, everybody there, he calls my name. He starts off the day first. He says, if you can plead guilty, not guilty, no contest. And then he says, if you have an attorney, your attorney will speak for you. But if you do not and you have a procedural question, please ask. I was like, okay. He just opened the door. So he calls my name. And the state trooper starts giving his testimony on the mud flap. I said, hold up. This is what you said. Oh, so you have a question? I said, yes, sir, I do. We need to establish the rules of this court. Can you tell me, so for the record, can you tell us what jurisdiction we're operating in? Now, at that time, I did not realize I didn't ask the question correctly. He turned around and answered it correctly. He gave the other answer, not the answer I wanted. He said, "Oh, Dinwiddie County, the Virginia, the United States." So he answered the question. And I said, "Well, sir, being you're schooled in law, you know, that doesn't establish jurisdiction." I said, and I held up the ticket. I said, "It's not a criminal matter. There's no grand jury indictment." He said, "Correct." I said, "So the way I see it, it's a contract." "Oh, no, it's not no contract." I said, "Well, I presume it is, and I see constructive fraud." And as soon as I said that, he's, "Oh, that's some law done away with 50 years ago, floating around on the internet. $50 fine. You can appeal it within 10 days. Okay? Because why? He didn't want me to start arguing that. He knew what I was getting ready to do. Constructive fraud is a principle of law. It doesn't have to be in a code. So, knowing who you are in relation to that name and knowing how to articulate it is really that's everything. How's it going, Private Nobody?
You private? Private, yes.
Oh, sorry about that. I had myself muted.
Oh, you're fine, sir.
I'm okay. I'm back here working in the background, listening.
Yeah. So, that phone call I had yesterday, Private Nobody, I put it up on my YouTube channel. You might want to go listen to it for a little bit. But he said something.
What was it about? Was that the one with you with Boris?
Yeah, that I just posted on YouTube yesterday.
I think I seen it popped up.
Yeah. It was me, Boris, and another guy. And he's been reading that War Powers book. And he said...
Yeah, I know that because he had posted some stuff on Rumble about that.
Man, I'm telling
last
you what.
week?
And it makes a lot of freaking sense. It really does.
Yeah, I haven't got a chance to look at it.
Well, think about it for a second. You already know that we're not a party to the contract called the United States Constitution.
Correct.
But the Second Amendment says you have the right to bear arms, and then it talks about the well-regulated militia. Right? So according to what Boris is thinking is what they're doing is conscription. Well, another word for conscription is the draft.
Correct.
So they're bringing you in as one of the militia. Now, what does it say about the militia? They're doing it through conscription, but it's a well-regulated militia, which means regulations.
Was that the intent of the framers? That the militia be organized by the government that is supposed to be restrained by that document?
No. You got no, not at all. What it is, the militia is to repel the invaders.
Yep.
At all costs.
Invaders, even if it is the government.
Yeah,
even if it is this corporate government.
But guess who the invaders are in this premise?
It's going to be the DA and the judge of the court.
No, it's the states. The states are the invaders. If you go back and read the 1956 and 57 report on jurisdiction of federal territories within the states, and I haven't got to complete it yet, but my dad read most of it. He might actually finished it. And I asked him, I said, give me your thoughts. And Dad come to the same conclusion Boris did. He said, there's a war going on between the states and the federal government over chattel paper.
Well, I would say that would be a different war When did this war? When did this war start? First of all, because everything changed after. Okay, all right, then I can see that.
When the bankruptcy happened.
Okay, I can see that because now you're talking solely corporate, though.
No, not solely corporate, because the states, even at the republic level, are bankrupt.
Well, they've been bankrupt.
Well, that's right. They've been bankrupt since the foundation of the country.
Exactly, from almost day one.
Yeah, because why? The Revolutionary War.
Exactly, and they're still paying. They're still paying tribute to it to this day.
That's right. So the war is going on, and the federal government, through these artifices called the social, the driver's license, et cetera, are conscripting you into the war as one of the militia, which means you have to change the way Boris sees it is you have to change the way you're doing things. They tell you how to do everything as one of the militia to report to the federal government that these invaders are doing what with your rights.
Right, and it's the invaders is the DA who's initiating the action or the instance in the court. So
okay,
so
hold on one second.
He's a pirate, citizen acting as a pirate, robbery upon the land.
Okay, no, that's patriot mythology talk.
Yeah, that is patriot mythology talk to a degree. Okay. Yes.
No, this is my problem. Problem.
What's wrong? Hey, wait. I'm a 10-year military veteran. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that thought? Because we're dealing with a foreign corporation, militarily occupying.
Okay, here it is in a nutshell. Here it is in a nutshell. I want to bring it to his attention so we can dispel this and move on.
Yeah.
There's no dispelling it.
Okay, just hear me out. Just hear me out. Hear me out. The problem that I discovered maybe about 15 years ago, I had a light bulb moment that showed me, because I've been involved with this now 36 years. And I used to wonder, why are the people falling? I'm looking at these magnificent documents and everything. It seemed like they had the right arguments. They had the facts. They had the law behind them. And then it hit me like a lightning bolt. And what came to my spirit was their arguments are based on two different jurisdictions at the same time, and that cannot work under the rule of like kind. It has to be man the man or fiction the fiction. There is no other way. And with the patriots, the forefathers in this movement, which I'm a part of, were mixing real man with fiction land.
Absolutely.
That's
why they failed. No other reason.
Let me answer this question because I agree with you. I agree with you. The law of contract says so. Like must contract with like. So here's my question: when they choose to make an unlawful conversion and bring you in as holding you the body to a fictional trust or nature or whatever you want to call it, and make you be held as surety in a debtor's prison to something that you ultimately are not the creator nor the controller of, they are the one that's mixing the jurisdictions and should not work. That's the failure.
No, because you signed on whether you realized it or not. And I'm not even starting with your mother. Yeah. I'm not even starting with your mother because that's actually void. But what you did once you became age of majority through our ignorance.
They did it at 16. They made you sign something at 16 that says that an infant can still be an agent.
Hold on, Batman.
Okay. Go ahead.
Hold on, Batman. Go ahead. Go ahead, Private Nobody.
Okay. And I was part of that also. And that's why what I do right now in this community, I start at the beginning to help people get away from what you just described, because that's the presumption that they view us as, that we're in legal joinder with that estate by our actions or inactions.
Correct.
It's what you do, say, or allow that determines what you are to this system. And if you don't correct the record, then you are it. That's the way they're looking at it. It's up to you to dispel it.
Now,
I agree.
Batman, it is not an unlawful conversion. It is not that at all. It feels like it. And what you said about the corporation, that's a bunch of mumbo jumbo too. Now,
Is it?
does it? Yes. Now, does it act as a corporation? Yes. Does it act all the time as a corporation? No. That section entitled
Does it conspire with bodies who does it conspire with other bodies who aren't even part of their organization? Yes. Against the people. Yes, they do. The IRS is not part of the federal government.
Yeah, but they have the right to do that under Article 1, Section 10, the contract clause, just like you have the right to contract. They have the right to
contract. Yeah, they those two parties can, because they're both corporations.
Right.
But yet to assume that I'm sure to their contract is where the unlawful conversion comes into play, and there's the fraud.
It is not unlawful conversion because you are the one that made the assumption, not them.
Did you change the status of their records? If you did not, you are in agreement whether you know it or not.
That's right. Now, let's take it one step further. When you became of age and you joined the military, you understand the law of agency. You were an agent for the commander-in-chief, okay, as a soldier, okay? And under the law of agency, the agent holds no liability for the principal unless the agent doesn't do their duty, and if that's the case, you would get court-martialed.
Or commits a crime.
Or commits a crime, yes. Now, when you became 16 and they give you that social, it said clearly on the back it wasn't your property, but you never once asked the question, if it's not my property, how should I be using it? And a guy the other day was saying, but they didn't tell us this in school. I said, you already knew it. He said, how? I said, when you became of age and got your driver's license, you want to go out on a date, and you said, hey, Mom, Dad, can I use the car? Was it not their property? He said, yeah. You knew there was rules to using their property, or you would get in trouble. So the government published everything. You never asked what the rules were, and you never read it. You can't blame the government
That's a
for
true
what
fact.
you had done. You cannot blame the government for your free will choice to remain ignorant.
Now that is a rounding fact, but it also comes back to this fact too. Everything they put on the normal everyday operation of life as an average American knows it, without delving into any kind of law or legalities or anything like that. All the knowledge we have aside, that when you go into a job, they always hand you this form. You got to fill this out and use your social and blah blah blah, because this is part of the requirements of the government. So as a young man or a woman, or boy or girl, whatever you want to say it, you have been given instruction from a body politic, the schooling system, to believe of this training that you're being given, and that you are, by everybody else around you, saying that this is the way that it is. And so so you think to yourself, so you think to yourself, just like everybody does, what's the need to go and question it? Because we're not thinking anything nefarious, because we live in such a grandiose, plentiful, and accommodating country. It isn't until later on, as a responsible adult, that we start seeing through the veil and noticing the fuckery for what it is, that we start to ask questions. And then we jump in this rabbit hole. We start chasing Alice in a little pretty blue dress, and I'm 3 levels down at least, and now I'm in the Batcave, because now I know for a fact exactly everything that's going on, just as well as you and everybody else. But
here's the thing. You start off with the education system, and you say the same thing that a lot of people say. It's because of the education
because it's a fact.
System. It is not a fact. Did you grow up in church?
I've got a church background, but that's irrelevant. That's not.
No,
That's
it's
not.
not
The
irrelevant.
point of it is.
No,
Well,
hold on,
again,
Batman. Hold on.
again,
Hold
as
on,
a
Batman.
young
Hold on,
developing
Batman.
person,
Let me
you're
finish.
not making a correlation between the lessons back then. We just aren't.
Hold on.
We're being led to believe something that isn't true,
Hold on.
and that's a fact.
The
All right,
Bible
go ahead.
warned us, right? The Bible said, put your trust in no man, but you was disobedient. The Bible said, broad is the path that leads to destruction, and many that go down it, but you didn't listen. The masses, you're right. The masses go along. You're right. Guess what? The Bible told you that. You chose to be one of the masses. Because remember, at one time on the Social Security card, it said, do not use for identification. And guess what? Because some man in a suit said, I need your social. You said, okay. You didn't say, wait a minute, I'm not allowed to use it for identification. You didn't write the trustees and say, hold up, if this is your property, how should I be using it? You didn't learn the rules. You cannot turn around and blame the education system. You cannot blame the government for what you inherently knew. Because doesn't the Bible say the law is written on your heart? You know if it's somebody else's property and you don't know how to use it, you should have asked a question. You knew that. That's common sense.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, Tim.
That's Bill.
Oh, Bill. Sorry.
Anyway.
Yeah. Go ahead, Chad.
Hey, I was just thinking, interjecting. Well, if you say that they are belligerently and deliberately training you to be oblivious to the truth, but if you go to work for a company or military training for that matter, when you go into the military, they stop training you how to be a good citizen. They stop training you how to eat meat, and they start training you based upon the principles, maxims, and rules that they want you to learn, and they disregard everything else. So to blame them to start training you the way they need to train you to be a soldier and removing everything else, is that really wrong? I mean, you did sign a contract. You did enter the military.
It is wrong in my mind, because why? At what point are we going to accept responsibility for ourselves?
That's what I'm saying. Why are you saying that they are doing all this to you and they're programming you and they're teaching you wrong, but you signed up for the military and they told you that if you sign up for the military, we're going to train you to do this. And they stop training you to do what you think is right, and they start training you based upon the contract.
Would you like me to answer that question? Would you like me to answer that question? I will answer it for you. Okay, so because of when I was young and how that I was, I'm a Gen Xer, you know what I mean? Don't come home till the second street light comes on, you rotten ass kid, that kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
And
been there, done that.
yeah, you know how it is. And I will rip your arm off you and beat you with it, boy. That kind of thing. So I read the Constitution. I read the Bill of Rights. I read some things on the surface of belief through a teacher that I had that I looked up to, and the way he described, the Revolutionary War and what it meant to the people of the nation, and it bring us forth and blah 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 blah. That an idea was formulated in my head through those exposures of teachings, that the hero complex that I now carry, and I did even back then, the bully breaker, the keep the heads up of the downtrodden and make right of right, and might doesn't make right. Just because you're loud doesn't make you right. And that I decided that I wanted to do my duty to God and my country, to defend the Constitution for the United States of America, the people therein, from all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that's what I did. And then I went overseas, and then I saw some things, and then I started realizing, and I came to the further understanding that I was part of the world's largest terrorist organization, period. It isn't the men and women that listen to me. Listen, hold on a second. I'm not done. It isn't the men and women that are in there, because we all had the same exact notion and feeling going into it. But most of us leaving it came back wanting, at the minimal wanting. And I tell you, that's and then all of a sudden I proved my innocence when somebody made a false accusation against me 22 years ago. And this man who is supposed to be having an oath of office to protect my rights against those who would impede upon them did not do that oath, and I ended up doing 5 years in a Texas prison for something I proved I didn't do. That destroyed me. I mean, you have no idea. So now at this day and age, and I'm 55 years old, and I'm learning this, and I'm 10 years into this thing, and I've got revelation after revelation coming, and things are coming to me real fast. I've got a firm grip and understanding of things. So now, here I am, 35 years later, realizing for the very first time, and listening to people like you and others that are at my level or beyond, that say we had the responsibility back then to question what was going on, and I will say, and shaking my head with this frustration in my heart, saying I never even thought to even do such thing because I relied upon the faith of the nation as it was being presented to me, as the goodness that it was, and never would I have believed that the people that were up in Washington were looking at us as enemy combatants to their corporation. I would have never thought that. Never. Nobody does.
But guess what?
Can I bring in a very important point that actually addresses both sides? And this is something that I learned from my father, who was very wise and spiritually inclined. And towards the latter end of his life, he harped on a subject that he labeled spiritual reality, and how you have to look at things, almost everything, from a spiritual perspective first.
Yep.
And when you look at it from a spiritual perspective, and just like I said before, Pastor, with regards to Ed, who was making the same position that Batman is taking here now, I'm saying you're both right from a spiritual perspective, because we know that the God of this world, who is Satan, the devil, small g, that is, he has a program in place. Deception is one of his major weapons. And so, and we learned his protocols through what he has done through the annals of history with regards to indoctrinating the minds of man, starting with children. So when people go into the military, they're still basically children. You can go into the military and still is not able to drink, because most drinking age is around 21. You can go in at 18 to the military. So your mind is not molded. This is one reason why they want the young men, and they don't want the older who never went through that, because they're harder to indoctrinate. When you go into the military, they strip you of whatever you have in you, mold you to what they want you to be. And that's why you need deprogramming when you come out, because this whole cycle is going on, and this is part of Satan's plan. So to withhold information, because you talk about the information on the back of the card, most people don't even read the back of the card. They don't even know that information on there.
Well, they've looked at it numerous times, but they never looked at it with the intent of understanding it.
Correct. And it's based on what Batman was talking about with regards to how we were brought up through school. Now, Satan don't want you to know the truth. So he'll give you everything. He'll give you some truth, but he's not going to give you the truth that matters. And remember, with regards to the spiritual realm, all you need to be is guilty of one, and you're guilty of it all.
That's right.
So he'll give you 99% truth. All he needs to is to knock you off your square with 1 point, and you're guilty of it all. So that's why I say, when I look at it from an overview, you're both right. Yes, we were indoctrinated a certain way, but yes, there is, because God is going to hold Satan to that for misleading, to misdirect, to send out his false prophets. What did it says about the false prophets? They shall receive the greater damnation, meaning there's degrees.
Now, as much as I know you're right, and I don't disagree with you, The only reason I don't look at that is one reason and one reason alone. Because sooner or later we have to accept responsibility for ourselves and quit blaming the other side. Because because doesn't the Bible tell us we're to forgive those that trespass against us? As long as we refuse to forgive, God can't work. Plus, God tried to tell us.
Well, look at it this way.
Everything's a lesson.
And we cannot go to God, and we cannot go to God one day and say, the devil made me do it. So when
no, that's not going to work.
When you're sitting there saying it's the education's fault, the government's fault, everybody else's fault, you're really saying the devil made me do it.
The evil did it.
No, his power. I was going to say his power is persuasion and influence. He can't make you do anything, but he can persuade you to do something. That's right. And that's where he gets us at. Remember, this is a spirit that's been around for thousands of years. He knows man inside and out. We don't stand a chance. Exactly. So as my father said, the weakest of the evil spirits is stronger than the strongest man. This is why we need the whole armor of God to protect us from the wiles of the wicked. We don't stand a chance.
Now, not only that, what did Batman say a minute ago? He said we had faith in this, right? Well, faith goes to God. So what are you saying? You made these people your God?
Well, faith goes to dogma. Faith is dogmatic.
No, it's not.
No matter what teaching it is, faith is dogmatic.
No, it's not.
Yeah, that's cool.
No, faith isn't dogmatic. The Hebrew word for faith is not blind. It's evidence-based. Okay? If you research the word faith in the Old Testament, you will never find what's being taught today as faith. And that's blind faith. In other words, you just believe it because it said it. No. The Old Testament, nowhere in the Old Testament, faith is based on evidence. Does that transpose into this legal system of what we study? Yes, it does. Because why? We learn to trust certain teachers and we accept what they say blindly. Look how many times you see these false citations floating around out on the internet. Why? Because you didn't go read it to see if it was true. You accepted that faith blindly.
Oh my God. I'm glad you mentioned that. I actually had to bring to the attention somebody who's a teacher that was publishing a false citation. So I showed it to him. I gave him the actual case. I said, you can look it up for yourself, but here's the case that you should use to say the same thing. Yeah. So you got a lot of teachers out there teaching things that they didn't even research yet. Are you?
Yeah.
So therein lies this whole focus when that getting into their playground, we got to follow their rules and procedures and processes to get the court to notice what the hell we're doing, which then again leads us into a blind faith, which we know they're going to fundamentally reject everything we do anyway, just because they can.
Wait a minute. Let me put you onto something based on actual experience. Now, when I say I've been in this for 36 years, it's not just book knowledge, but it's actual in the court experience. My last experience in the court, and I'll show you how this actually works. And I shared this with Pastor already. I went into a case dealing with an intervention into a case because I had 33% interest in this particular property. And I'm coming in through a registered assumed name because that name is not me and me is not the name. And so the issue between me and the judge, because he brought forth a special hearing just on the appearance form. We're not even getting to the substance of the claims. Because the forms only had two options. You're either pro per se, or you're an attorney. I had to create a lane because I'm not either one of those, but I have a right to access the court through my person. And so
right.
he wanted me to accept the name to be me. No. So we went around and around in circles for about 10 minutes. There was no agreement. There was no contract. And he says to me, well, if you're not going to accept the name, I guess we cannot do business. And it's ironic that he says we cannot do business, because that's what's at play here. Business. It's not about right or wrong, what have you. It's business.
That's
and
nothing
so
personal, just business.
And he could not go further. He couldn't. So when you separate yourself from the estate that you're legally enjoined to by your own hand or mouth, makes a huge difference once you separate.
It does. That's why that ticket I got this last year, they sealed and dismissed the record. When they asked about the name, I said, oh, that name is property of the United States. They're the secured party in this matter. I'm just the agent for that estate.
There you go.
She said, the clerk said, can you hold a minute? Come back about 3 minutes later and said, that matter's been sealed and dismissed. And then she turned around and backdated it to the 11th. So that way you couldn't prove that she dismissed it that day. And I never went to court, never filed any papers, nothing.
Every single ticket that I've done, and for others, I've never lost based on that principle alone. And I did one the long way just to see how this thing worked with the assumed name and everything. And I actually did it indirectly through a lady that I had helped set up her record. She's from Maryland. She got a ticket in Virginia. I'm a co-name holder and part of her power of attorney as the second attorney in fact. So, and what I do with people that I work with, if they set me up that way, I can have standing to speak. And so I responded.
The name certificate, they have, they put their name on one side and your name on the other.
Yes, as a name holder. Yeah. So I respond. I put in the ANC record. I believe we put in the passport record because this is also part of the passport process also. Guess what? Case just went away. She didn't have to go to court. See, a lot of people are making it way too more difficult than what it actually is. If you go down to the least common denominator, and I learned this from a guy in Texas, so this is not something I created. Between a guy in Texas and a guy in Nevada, I put this together. See, I take ideas and create processes.
Because he knows the principles.
Exactly. So the guy in Texas was and he makes sport of courts. He loves it. It's like theater for him because he knows conclusively, without a shadow of a doubt, if you don't give in to the name and the person, they cannot move forward. That's
Whittingham?
Extremely. What's that again?
Whittingham?
No.
Okay.
I think his only had a 2-syllable name. I forget his name offhand. I got his files. But he makes it very clear that everything starts and ends with the name. That's his position.
Yeah.
It's all about the trust.
And I would say he's 90% or 95% correct. So they can't get past the name. They can't do nothing.
And look, yeah, it does start with that because why? Vital Records, when I called them, admitted that they own the record. Well, okay, it's their property. They can't own people. The ownership of people is illegal under the Northwest Ordinance. Well, the back of the Social Security card says it's theirs. Again, they can't own people. So you got all this evidence that it's not you. And you got these principles of law that say it's not you. But we run around every day and not do business with that in the name properly. We're not communicating to the proper parties, and we're volunteering as a gratuitous agent for the liability.
Under a false pretense
and
that
not
that's
getting
the proper procedure to do so.
No, it's not a false pretense. They admit this stuff.
They do, but we don't.
Yeah.
We're not into it. But we don't. But unlike you know. Anyway, never mind.
Yeah, I mean, look, I used to think like you, Batman. I used to think the same way. I've made a bunch of the same freaking arguments. I got slapped around. I mean, but it was really 2 years ago that my eyes were open to the trust. So it's like the secured party creditor process. I've been there, done that. Okay. But I was like, but that process taught me trust law. And when the veil come off my eyes and realized, wait a minute, you're already a secured party.
Right.
But you're not acting like one. You're acting like you're the trust. And if you're in the trustees are the legal owner of that estate, well, that means who holds the liability?
The state that created it.
No, the trustees. This is simple trust law. I just posted a link in the group again. Just scroll up. The Social Security Administration tells you who the trustees are.
It does.
Yeah. But what are we not doing? We're not learning the principles to articulate it right. We want to go into court and argue that, oh, I didn't do that. I didn't do this. They're not after you. They're after the trust. They know you didn't do that. They're not after you. They're after the trust. By the way, Private Nobody, I had a revelation yesterday after talking to Boris on that video. Satan's the accuser. The only thing that Satan can do is accuse. He needs you to convict yourself by accepting certain words and terms and agreeing to the contract. So you end up convicting yourself.
It's been like that from the beginning.
Yeah, it is.
If you look in the garden and look at the principles at play there, all he did was suggest and induce, and they committed themselves to death. He didn't make them do it. He offered the contract, and Eve accepted, and then Adam accepted Eve's contract, and they all fall down.
Now, I use the example because, in some states marijuana is legal, in some states it's not, in the federal it's still not. You go to court. Did you use marijuana? Yes, I did. Well, then you accepted it, and now you're guilty. You convicted yourself. But do you have firsthand knowledge that it's marijuana? No. I don't care what legal term they call it. You have no firsthand knowledge. Did you create it? No, God did. All you know is it's a plant that God created for your benefit. But what do? You never question their words, and you never rebut those words. So you
first of all,
convicting yourself.
And that is true. And the biggest reason why you convicted yourself is that you accepted the liability with the name from inception, because it was really never about you. It was about the trust.
That's right.
It was never about you.
Popeye, they never got past the name with Popeye. Popeye actually, when the judge pushed the issue on the name, he said, Your Honor, are you trying to get me to commit a crime in open court? That's because for me to use that name illegally would be fraud upon the court. And since the United States owns it, I can't use it illegally.
Well, that's why it must be registered so you can use it legally in their system of commerce. Otherwise, you're going into court without standing, which gives the court leeway to do as it please. because you were an enemy combatant when you came into court in legal joinder with the estate without proper standing to do business. So what business do you have before the court? None. You're guilty when you came in.
Yeah.
By virtue of not. There you go.
Hey, you volunteered for it. But here's the thing. But here's the thing. You volunteered for it because you've been invaded on.
No, they're not invading. You're invading.
Did anybody force you to sign any documents? Yes or no?
Under duress and direct threat, absolutely.
No.
Okay. Well, that would be an exception, but most forms that people sign, whether it was a bank form, whether it was a driver's license application, whether it was going to college, or any of those things, we done under our own free will, but not understanding the implication and the magnitude of us signing those documents. But we did sign.
Exactly. So acting under the agency of infancy.
That's right.
Exactly.
Without understanding in clarity to the ramifications of our actions. And as we do, those that know were laughing behind their hands for their unjust enrichment. Now, I just posted something in the chat area there, and everybody should go back.
Wouldn't you say that the contracts were all fraud because there was not full disclosure in the meeting of the minds?
No.
100%.
Well, first of all, it's not about contract per se. Yes, it's a form of a contract, but we're dealing with trust, and trust doesn't require you to give information like a straight up man-to-man contract. That's how they get over.
If you've been appointed to a position and then being held surety to that position, and unbeknownst to you, then yes, it's a violation of contract law.
Wait a minute. Who appointed you? Who appointed you?
You have to get the trustees appointed me by issuing me the certificate that stated that an organization was organized. They issued the organizational certificate. They issued the organizational certificate.
They never appointed you to anything. You're making a claim with no evidence.
Because first of all, with regards to that certificate, generally we get it through our parents. If we're of age, we go and get it. They didn't assign it to us directly. Yes, indirectly, I agree with you. Because it came as a part of your appearance in this realm.
5 years old.
So
you were 5 years old and joined into the schooling system with your birth certificate and the information given by the informant for the second time in your life as the traitor to another registrar for the schooling system part of the government. You were then linked as that. And then at 16 or 14 or whatever, 15, whenever you go for your first job, they needed more documentation for another agency that's not even related, that's in contract. And again, you are convinced, you are told that this is what you need to follow, this is what you do. As a minor, cannot contract. At 16 years old, they have you take your birth certificate and your social security card because that is what's required on the DMV, not knowing that it's a part of the Department of Revenue and it's only for fractional revenue generating purposes only, because you're an enemy combatant and you must gain licensure from the president to act in commerce with that corporation. Period.
Correct.
So it's a farce. It's a lie, and you are lied to, and you are subjected to a fraud from inception.
It is not.
And I don't care if we're taking responsibility. Yes, we take responsibility for it now because we know. But if you don't know, you have no culpable mens rea to anything that's omitted or not said.
Now, I agree with that on this point here, and this is part of your argument that you brought to my attention, Pastor, with regards to what the informant did from inception, that she was not legally in a capacity to make that determination when our mothers
because she couldn't, because she signed all the hospital release forms that say she was under a medical care and medical determination, and she was not she did not have her faculties that are applicable to make any kind of rational decision. So everything that happened from that point on was
from
only due
what
to the
they call
direction of those that would fleece you under fraud for their unjust enrichment. It
well,
is
actually, let's
designed
stop
that
there.
Yeah,
way.
so we
I'm gonna
just
make
gotta correct the record. Just gotta correct the record.
And you're
Now-
I
right.
was
No,
gonna
we're
raise
right. We're
say, I
just, we're
was
just
gonna raise
arguing the
say,
point. That's all.
let's go to the Genesis. We all agree on that point, and Pastor was the one that brought it to my attention. So under the doctrine of the fruit of the poisonous tree, if that is the first fatal flaw in the thread of things, everything thereafter is void. Under the fruit of the poisonous tree.
Hold on. It is not fraud. One, they publish everything.
No. Let's stop there, Pastor.
Okay.
This is the reason why. Once you have a fatal defect, it cannot be corrected down the line.
Hold on. There is not a
Because
fatal
everything
defect.
from the initiating instance, the originating instance of those of them putting into effect a direction is what makes everything from that point void. Not voidable. Void.
No, you're missing one thing. Your parents did it of their own free volition before
They had no agency to do that for you.
Hold on. They didn't do it for you. How many times do I gotta prove? No, they didn't do it to you.
No, I listen. I understand it. Listen. Whoa. Okay, listen. We totally get the separation of where we're at in our learned understanding. We get that. That's a horse that's been beaten down and put up for glue.
No.
We get that. We get it. But at 5 years old, you had no.
It's that at 5 years old.
Yeah, it's originating instance.
No, the originating instance was not the birth certificate.
It's a claim to agency and surety when you were induced into the schooling system at 5 years old, but with your birth certificate and the informant given the information.
No.
Okay.
You know the video I put up about that where we went over the contract we discovered in Tennessee? Did that have anything to do with you? No. There were 3 products of conception. I showed my footprint documents. Guess what was on the footprint document? The mother took the baby home. Guess who never got registered?
I get
the
that
baby.
too.
Okay. Now guess what? The parents signed a contract long before the birth event happened, giving the infant up.
When they got married.
No. The contract was signed with the hospital so the hospital could give them care. It says in the contract there was an assignment.
I get that. I'm with you on that.
Okay. So you got to quit thinking it's about you.
What about the special trust deposit that my father made into my mother?
That's irrelevant. That's different. That's private.
That's private.
That's pretty funny. Now listen. Let me try to back up one more step. When the 2 people who decided, because they said this was the procedure, that you got to get a license from the county or from the state to perform the marriage, when they did that, they contracted with the state. So when in that contract it says they would give up their biological the union of the offspring of the union or the production of the union. And then according to Colonel Edward Mandelhouse, that you would have to register your biological property in the adage of pledging, and they will hold security interest over that. So through that contract of marriage, then led up to the performance of signing into the agreement at the hospital, the foundling center, to which the unmarried woman was going to abandon the child. So I think
but you didn't.
Because that's why they say they can't. That's why they make everybody the marriage certificate. It's all contract. And it's all bullshit, and it's not fully disclosed. The ramifications of what you're doing is not disclosed.
Yes, it's disclosed. Listen? You're coming from the mindset that they have an obligation to hold your damn hand. That they must hold my hand and tell me every freaking detail. They
Well, the
publish
7 aspects of
everything.
contract law.
Oh, yeah. 7 aspects? Why don't you tell me what they are? Because I
Let's
can
look.
tell you
Let's
now,
look at
there
this
is
from a
only
spiritual perspective.
4 points of a contract, not 7.
But let's look at this from a spiritual perspective. Now, Pastor, you were saying that, they can't hold our hands. They don't have to tell us everything.
Because they
But
publish it. You got to
hold
freaking
on. I understand that. And God published his word also. However, he also know that most people didn't understand that word. And what did he do? He sent prophets and apostles to break it down for the people, because without that, the people would never understand, even if they read it every day of their lives. So
I get that.
God sends people to give the necessary information to live life and to obtain salvation. Now, Satan uses similar principles, but he withholds. He doesn't tell the whole story. He doesn't let people know the whole story. So if God knows that the majority of the people are not going to get it unless he sends his specialized agents and ambassadors to enlighten the people, how are the people going to be enlightened on the other side when all of this deceit is going on and nobody is illuminating the minds of the masses? That's where I think Batman is coming from.
I do it. I get all that. I get all that. But the thing is,
And
like
I
I said,
and I understand what you're saying too. I understand what you're saying too, and I agree with you that when we come to a certain point of our understanding down our path to the truth, our own truth, and how it applies to our fundamentals, our values, and our direction going forward, I get that. We do and need to take responsibility for ourselves and stop blaming what we didn't know, because we have to move forward from that point. I get that. But the argument and the discussion that we're having is the originating instance that we were not culpable. We had no mens rea. We had no idea. It was never, ever purposely not brought to our attention upon generation how to operate properly with their system of documentation, of admittance, of even just showing up and saying here that you all of a sudden end up being a surety embodiment to be imprisoned for something that you're not responsible for. That is fraud.
But hold on, it's not fraud. Again.
Oh God.
You're talking about a 5-year-old. Okay, they're not going to do this stuff to a 5-year-old. But look at that definition of infant and infancy. I just posted.
I'm with you on it.
Okay, infancy has nothing to do with age. And by the way, Private Nobody, maybe you should read it again, because an infant can contract for certain things.
Can be an agent. That's right.
Can be an agent.
Here's the thing. When we recognize and understand how they're doing things, it takes a little while to get to that point to understand that, and that's fine. But we also see the shady bullshit within that understanding of what they're doing. It is shady. We have to admit the fact that it is shady for their purposes and only for their benefit.
Now, if you look at that second document I shared, that is the contract out of Tennessee that we discovered 3 years ago. Eric, cite your authority, actually went and found the PDF. Guess what? The words has not changed. Guess what?
I saw that video the other day.
This is the contract that was signed by the mother and or father or both, and it plainly, in no bones about it, it is very clear that you were giving assignment. What are you giving assignment over?
It says informant, plain as day. Informant.
And guess what? you give assignment over the other two products of conception because of property law. The hospital can only record what's in its possession. That's why it's not you. That is actually should be understood by everyone. That if you can't go record my car, it's not in your possession. This is why I say it's not fraud. We're not reading the contracts. That was by the hospital. Was that by the government? No, that was by the hospital. Are you going to say that the hospital committed fraud?
The hospital is an instrumentality of the United States.
Well, yes,
of the county and of the state, because it's a founding center, right?
Yes, yeah. I get all that. But
it's actually a military institution.
Correct. Now, does that mean you had the opportunity to read it? But no, we never read contracts. We go download apps and we just click agree and then get mad later that they sell our data. You can't do that. Oh, you agreed to it. Just found out the other day, Alexa, when you agree to the terms of service to Alexa, Amazon.
Oh my God.
Amazon Echo, the Amazon Echo.
Oh my God.
17 contracts.
It is horrible. It is horrible.
I put that thing in the fireplace.
Oh, that it is horrible. Those contracts that they got there. I never agreed to Alexa or any of that. But going back to your thing with regards to infants, I think we were talking about two different infants. When Batman was talking about infants, we're talking about a young child or a baby.
I'm saying look at the definition of infancy.
I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it right now. And that's clearly showing. Yeah. No. I'm saying Batman was talking about a 5-year-old as an infant.
He's talking about the baby.
Exactly.
The baby went home with the mother. The hospital has no control over the flesh and blood man. Neither does the government.
Correct.
That's why it's not about you, and that's why it's not fraud. They will let you believe under the First Amendment whatever you believe. Because look at it. How many people out there are teaching you must change your status? How can you
where did you can't. That's
know what it is.
Exactly. And even what I teach, I make that very clear. The only status change for man is with God, not with another man. Now this definition of infant,
a correction. That's all.
Yes, the status correction of the record, and it's regarding the record, not you. It's not about you.
Right.
Okay. Right. Now this definition of infancy, what dictionary did this come out of?
18. It's Anderson's dictionary, 1889. It is
okay. Now
definition.
Yes. Okay. Now, is he or the editors of that dictionary talking about a man or a fiction? Because if an infant has a mind, to me, they're talking about the man.
Yep.
It's definitely a legal dictionary, so it's definitely going to be a legal terminology of a legal fiction, which is in infancy.
I think
not necessarily. That didn't really change. That didn't really change until the 1900s.
Before you reach your age of majority, until you understand who you are and go before the crown and claim your name and your birthright of your majority, you are considered in infancy.
I agree with that. Yes. I agree with all of that. My question about the definition, I'm just sticking to the definition because this is clearly talking about a living soul.
Yes.
And keep in mind, prior to the 1900s in this country, especially under Woodrow Wilson, and once they brought in the Birth Certificate Act, and this happened before 33, but they were setting up. And once they brought up,
I've been trying to find it.
Colonel Edward, look in the chat. Look in the chat section. I just put it in there. Colonel Edward Mandelhouse. Look in the chat.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and all you got to do is look at the statues that, you know, the birth certificate statues around the country. It came in around the early 1900s. It started in late 1800s in England, because it actually started in England before it came over here. And so once that was set up and then they got what they wanted in 33, then everything switched and changed. Everything from public law to and we're getting ready to go through one of those right now too, by the way.
Yes, we are. They are repeating the same process. You're right.
Exactly.
Now,
So go ahead.
I don't disagree with what you're saying on the infancy. Yes, it applies to the man, but they still apply it to the man, because why? You got to realize, because of the bankruptcy, the government assumed the obligation to do what? Take care of the necessaries for the people, right? The necessary and proper clause of the Constitution.
Well, not necessarily. Not necessarily. If you look at the, what was it, 9 or 11 things for the original Constitution, what the federal government was to support, it had nothing to do with the day-to-day operations of the populace. It was only for the protection of the states.
Yeah, but in 33, when everything.
Oh, that's when they changed everything. That's when they changed everything.
They had to provide for the necessaries for the people. Okay, that's why they.
Well, yeah, but it was all, but that was all under a ruse too. That was all under a ruse. They said we have to get off the gold. You said now it's illegal. We're offering you the new deal. All obligations are the government. All you have to do is just depend on us. But that was it. And all of a sudden they threw it down.
That was the start of socialism in this country, right there.
Take it one step further. It wasn't necessarily for you to depend on them. Okay, it was, if it's their obligations, then you need to send it to them instead of doing all this debt discharge where you're sending it to the CFO and everything. Send it to the trustees who are, because what is the role of government? For your rights and interests. So how did they do it? They put it into a trust. You're not communicating with the trustees as the agent. And guess what? The government gets funded, the books get balanced, and your necessaries get provided. They had to give equal exchange when they did the contract.
And a lot of people going into Treasury, and some do get some relief. It takes a long time. But there's 4 trustees with the Social Security Administration. They can get the job done faster.
That's right. And I've got a document from them that says it's not your property, it's theirs. They accuse me of fraud trying to make a claim on their property.
And then we're acting as agent on behalf of the principal and not even getting paid for our services.
That's why you got to say, hey, I don't work for free. You need to start paying me a salary. See, all this stuff is common sense legal principles. It don't matter what their statutes and codes that they passed. Batman, if I'm going to get you to do something, shouldn't I compensate you for your time? Well, guess what? I have the same obligations. You know this stuff. It's common sense. Problem is,
listen. I want to make this very perfectly clear. The argument that we're having is fundamentally sound, and needs to happen especially for those that need a root of the originating instance and why and how. But understand where I'm at with it. I'm fully in agreement with everything that everybody's saying, because I'm in the know. I definitely have that fundamental past built into where I'm progressing towards. So it's not an argument of where I'm at today. What the argument is, yes, we definitely are responsible for everything we do after we have the instance of knowing. That's why they say you have 2 years usually of what do they call it?
Statute of limitations.
Exactly. From the moment it becomes aware to you.
Correct.
Okay, so so that's the same thing that we're talking about here. So absolutely right, 100%. You are right. Absolutely 1%. Private's right. Absolutely 1% that I'm right. The reason why I'm so passionate about it is because of my hero complex that I have. That if you are going to lead me around by the nose and then you're going to slam me to the ground for it, saying that I did a procedure wrong, then it falls on you, you son of a bitch, because you didn't teach me the fucking procedure. Because you got me so goddamn, and I'm talking about for the average American, because you got me so goddamn distracted about the whims, about the music, and about the fucking Kardashians that I can't see what the hell you're doing and why are you coming at me like that when you're supposed to be protecting my rights under the Constitution for the United States. And you're not doing that because you didn't tell me that you incorporated yourself. You didn't tell me that because you think that I'm your enemy. You didn't tell me that because you got me under agency of this corporation. You did not inform me to the liability that I impose upon myself and the actions that I do under the contractual obligations because you did not disclose it to me per contract law.
But they did. That's the thing.
Not through operation. Not through. Maybe they did. Yeah. I've read it. I've read it too. Listen, I've read it too, and I agree with you. I read it too, and I'd say the same thing to people. They published everything, but people are not concerned about that because they're worried about their damn kids being straight, teeth being straight. They're worried about their wives cheating on them. They're worried about their husbands running around. That's the So therein lies the responsibility for the tax. For everybody to be voluntary compliance, to take down a national debt, to be working for the greater good of the nation, of the people, and those that are bringing in the governance for that particular part that we believe in, for the betterment of the globe and commerce as a whole, they are the ones that are creating the fuckery purposely.
Batman.
So you can't even come to them and bring them with the argument of the knowing that you have. Because they're going to deny it and vehemently.
No.
That's why you do that.
Deniability.
You deny that on the private. I have no problem with them on the private exposing what's going on, and they acquiesce. So
they acquiesce.
you don't do it in the public.
But on the public, because you're interfering with their fuckery if you do it on the public. And
it's called interfering with commerce. It's called interfering with commerce. That's why you don't do it publicly.
But that's the thing. They're making you surety to a tax issue that they're not even telling you. They're trying to say that you are a criminal, and you're not a criminal. You have violated a revenue code about generating revenue when you could have very well been offered the opportunity. That's right, because they don't tell you they don't offer you the assignment. They don't offer you the document to make the endorsement and the assignment to discharge the matter, because that's what it's all about. So what they do, because of the prison planet system they got going on, to reap more monies off of your trust, they put you in a warehouse situation under a bill of lading with a determination under insurance, which is another fucking scamming fraud.
Okay, let's stop 1 second. Okay, you saying debt and money. Where are those things in existence in this system? First of all, there is no debt. Because if they reset it they started at zero and went backwards, if you never had a positive, you can't have the negative. So there is no debt. Number two, we have no money. We can't pay. We can't pay for anything. There's people are winning that argument. There are people that are winning that argument on the regular.
Yeah,
and each of us have an exemption.
That aspect, but I look at it differently. Yeah, you can't necessarily use the word pay, depending. But when I read through their stuff, I don't even use the argument that we don't have money. Why? We have more money than we know what to do with. What did they do in 33? Yes, they made it to where you could not demand payment in gold and silver. That just stopped that. What did they turn around and do? They made it so you can use anything as money. My buddy Mark, I said it before, he used rice.
Even a napkin. Even a napkin. Yep.
And
I love that.
My buddy Mark,
a judge will not touch that subject.
That's right.
Because there's a guy, and he's been successful all the time. He'll let people go to the conclusion of their proceedings, especially if it's so-called debt-based proceeding. And then when it's time for the pronouncement and they pronounce the judgment, and then he asks the judge, how do I pay this? By which species?
Yeah, what species exactly?
And then the judge, every case he basically said the judge don't answer it. He said you take that up with the opposing side. He steps out. And then the opposing side don't know what to do. And what it ends up is a stalemate. Nobody does anything.
See,
all you have to do is ask that one question: by what species?
Now, people think that all we have is Federal Reserve notes a lot of time. No, we don't. The way they changed the system is we have all kinds of species, and I look at money as anything of value. Because
okay, all you got to do is look up Title 12, USC, Section 1813. You'll see all the different forms of money that they have in the system.
Oh, they have more than that.
Well, that's the one that's under banking. That's under banking. The Banking Act is telling you exactly what they accept as money.
But you go look at Title 12, USC 1813. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, now, they have more than that because, you know, the coffee bean case. I told you what Mark did.
Yeah.
Okay. Money used to be seashells. Did that mean money didn't exist? No, the seashells were money. The purple seashells. Okay?
Well, that was dealing man to man. We're talking about in the corporate realm. In the corporate realm,
all they
first of all, the agent is only representing the principal, and everything that they do on their side. And I learned this back in 88, 89, and it never left me. Whatever a fiction does, whether it's corporate, governmental, or an agency, all their acts, statutes, codes, rules, regulations, policies, and procedure, I even remember the order, must be reduced to writing. So they do nothing outside the written word. So with regards to their acceptance of forms of money, it is written.
Yes.
Anything outside of that is extra. And it's not, they don't have to abide by it. That's why they don't accept lawful money, because it's not prescribed for them to accept it. Not in the public. Now, there's a private side that real money still exists, but not in the public.
Yeah, go look at the movie John Wick. I mean, what'd they use?
I didn't see that movie.
They burned cash. You give them cash, they burned it. They only used gold.
Got two 1-ounce silver coin in my pocket right now.
Did you guys see the Perth Mint got busted with some fake bricks getting sold to China, and then it just came out they got 600 bags of nickel that were filled with bricks over in Europe. Somebody's stealing all the metal. Somebody's stealing all the metals.
Yeah, so I just don't like calling it a fraud anymore, because why? Most of the masses don't understand what fraud is. Fraud has certain specific elements, you know, and it may be fraudulent, but it's not fraud. Fraud has.
Well, I look at it this way, going back to the premise that my father taught me, to look at it from a spiritual reality perspective.
Yeah, and
every government in this world is under the influence of Satan. Correct. He does not act honorably. None of his governments are righteous. There is no righteous government in this world.
Correct.
That's run by man.
But
so therefore, there is inherent deception in every system.
Yeah, deception, I will agree with.
Well, deception and fraud go hand in hand. They go hand in hand.
Performance induced through deception is fraud.
But you know why you can't prove it? You go into court and you try to prove fraud. You know why you can't? Because you can't prove the individual had the intent.
Well, see, that's the problem that most people will have when you look at it from that vantage point, because the intent didn't even come from the individual per se. The intent is built into the system. It's built into the system.
Now,
exactly.
That's the reason why I said what I said. You just nailed it, Private Nobody. It's built into it, which means what? It's not fraud. It's constructive fraud.
Well, constructive fraud and fraud still goes down at the end, the same thing once judgment is pronounced.
Yeah, they can get same judgment, yes, but constructive fraud doesn't require the intent.
And actually, it's easier to prove that than the actual fraud, because it's like 4 or 5 elements of fraud that you have to prove. But constructive fraud, you don't have to have those same elements.
Actually, you have to have, there's 5 elements to constructive fraud. And none of it has to do with the person's intent. This is the reason why I keep saying don't use fraud, because why? What you see in the legal community is you see everybody calling it fraud and they don't even know what it is. Okay. Did they publish everything? Yeah. Was every congressman bad? No. They're working as a union. Are certain ones bad? Yes. But what do they have to do? They have to publish everything. Okay. Now, so it's not fraud because why? We didn't read it, but is it constructive fraud? Did they build it with fraud in it? Yes, and that does not require the intent. That can be done by accident. That goes back to
now when everything
that goes back to constitutional principles of when the court views a code, does it meet constitutional muster?
And that's been watered down since the Civil War, so it's easier for them to protect themselves than it was before. The way things are set up now is it's between the 3 constitutions. The way I was taught, the originals, even going back before that, the Articles of Confederation and all the other former, because there was like other documents that had brought the Union together also. They were not-for-profit corporations. They actually called them companies back then, but a company was a corporation.
Like the Virginia Company?
Exactly, and that was huge. And then after the Civil War, they created a corporation that was for profit and for control of subjects. This is where the Vatican was coming in to, because they first tried through the South to get in. Then that didn't work. So they started infiltrating through the law.
By the way.
In which they always do, by the way. Go ahead.
By the way, Private Nobody, the Articles of Association from 1772. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes. That's another one of those compacts. So they had quite a few of them before the Constitution. Yes, your question.
I'm wondering if any of those compacts were done away with when they created the Union.
Well, it depends. Like, take, for instance, the Articles of Confederation makes it very clear in the document that that is perpetual. So there is no end to that as far as the union of the original 13 colonies.
Well, that's what I'm wondering about the Articles of Association.
I haven't read that full document. I only read excerpts from it.
And
And
in the
so,
Articles of Association, all the states said, we will not do business with anyone that has slaves. We will not use slaves. All of that.
correct. So, but getting back to my point, after the Civil War, they started infiltrating and bringing in more and more of the Roman civil law. And it culminated in 33. So they work long range. And this is coming from a spiritual reality perspective, because the spirits don't operate in the same time frame that mankind does, because our life is very short as opposed to them being around for thousands of years.
Yes.
So Satan has a plan, and he's been rebuffed a lot because the timing is not correct. See, Satan, once called Lucifer, understands the Bible very well.
And
That's
he
more than any
follows the
man.
law.
Exactly. And so he's trying to erect what he wants is this one world controlled government. And they've been at this for thousands of years. This whole concept is not even new. As my father used to say, the new age is actually the old age. It's just being recycled. That's why the Bible tells us that we should not be ignorant of Satan's devices, because he does the same thing over and over and over again. And why should he change? Because it works so good.
No,
I mean, 99.9% of the people fall for it. There's only a remnant that is going God's way. It's always been that way. Only a small amount compared to the whole. So with that in mind, when we look upon what happened with the current Constitution, which is actually a corporate municipal trust out of Washington, D.C., which is lawful under the organic Constitution, Congress had authority to do that. So a lot of people look at what happened into 1806 and 1871, which was an amendment to 1806, as being illegal. No, it's not. They had the authority to do that, to create a government within the nation state of Washington, D.C., which is not part of the 50 or the 13 at that time. And so with that in mind, they just expanded it fictionally to cover the entire country, which we know it don't, especially what Rivera brought out to our attention, that Boris is carrying a torch. You know, they have very limited authority on the land overall. They don't have territorial jurisdiction over most. So the constitutions that we're operating with right now does not allow for the man per se to have a say in the system, except as an agent or an I use the term office holder so people can understand how, like, a CEO runs a corporation. It's the same principle.
Yeah.
And
the same principle, yes.
And you either operate that way or you operate as a servant slave for the state. You have a choice. That's your choice. You either operate as an office holder, manipulating your way through commerce, through the person that they created, that actually was, I guess you can say, part of you when you talk about the cord and the placenta, the trust that they created to allow you to operate in commerce. Because even when you talk about, what's the guy's name who was talking with Woodrow Wilson that y'all brought up several times?
Colonel Edward Mendelhouse.
Mendelhouse. He made it very clear that in order for the system to work, you know, the people have to consent without their knowledge to this whole setup. So when you read those words from that article, you can see what Batman would say, clear fraud, because the intent was there. The intent was to fool the people into their own slavery.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree with that, but the only thing is they do have to tell you everything. They just don't, it just doesn't express how they have to tell you.
Right. And
So-
that's
And
where
even-
the
and
devil,
even-
that's
and
where the
even that
devil,
is fraud. Even that is fraud. Omission is still fraud. To compel you to react and to compel you to act and compel you to perform based upon a limited amount of knowledge, and to make the knowledge so obscure that you can't find it. Not one man in a million will discover our plans, and if he does, we will still have plausible deniability within our arsenal. So yes,
Hold on.
it is fraud.
It is not fraud
Go ahead.
because here's why. I'll give you a prime example. You served in the military. You said you swore an oath to the United States Constitution of the United States of America.
No, for the
Are
United
you
States of America.
sure? Are you sure that was the language? Because the other
That
day
was-
somebody
that was-
brought it
that
to my
was-
attention that it didn't
is
say
different.
United States of America. It said
it only says
United
United
States.
States. That's all it says, United States.
Now, one.
Well,
United
but
States,
mine was in the mid '80s, so that's probably different.
Yeah. Now, I want you to think about something. We run around saying that the most important document in this world, in this country, is the Constitution. When I signed up for the military, when you signed up, did you study it? Did you read? You just read the document, but did you study it?
Well,
yeah,
it
because- yeah,
it
it-
actually
well,
didn't make a difference. It really didn't make a difference based on the setup
it
that it had after 33. What people would have to do is invoke. You have to invoke. If you don't invoke, it doesn't exist. You have to invoke the organic constitution because the constitution that we have now and the organic are two different constitutions. I mean,
Well,
they
that's
made
not true,
a quick flip from the first one to the second one, essentially with one word
Now,
and a
that
different
may
style.
That may
When
be
it-
true, but the point I'm getting at is the federal government, one of the most important things you could ever go look at is the United States Constitution with analysis and interpretation. It's free for everybody to download it.
But that analysis is, in my opinion, is flawed for the very reason that they're using language and thought from the organic to try to make it apply for this corporate for-profit controlling constitution. It's two different things. You're mixing apples and oranges, and that's fraudulent in my opinion.
That may be true, but the problem is contract law, Article 1, Section 10. I watched a video of Anton Scalia talking to Congress about the role of the United States Supreme Court. A lot of people don't realize we have two Supreme Courts. We have one under Article 1 and one under Article 3. And he said in part of that video, he said, look, we don't strike down your unconstitutional laws. We just ignore them. Why? Contracts. Because if you go study the Ashwander rule, what is that about? Contracts. If you receive a benefit from a statute or code, the court will not pass upon the constitutionality of it because you received a benefit.
And contract is superior than the Constitution.
That's why in the Constitution, what does it say in the Sixth Amendment? That the previous debts before the creation were still owed and still honored. And the treaties.
All the bankers fought for that. They definitely fought for that.
And the treaties are still are there. All of this is contract law. The problem is the people, Proverbs. What is in the book of Proverbs? A whole lot of contract law.
Indenture.
So that's the reason why I say this is all the reasons, different reasons why I say it's not fraud. Constructive fraud? Yes, I agree. Because why? When I realized how much they put everything out, and even before the inception of the internet, They had a law library in freaking every county. But we said it was more important to go drink beer and get laid and watch football than we did about what is our rights. We just assumed what they were.
And it's still that way.
Well, because we had this furtive understanding that our rights were unalienable, and they were being defended. They were being defended by. They were defended by the those that we voted into office as a collective against whatever may come from abroad. We never in a million years would ever design in our heads that we would be infiltrated from within under this bullshit. And it's also, so think about it. If it can be constructive, what do you want to put on front of it? It was all misleading. It was all done against the people.
No, your rights are still unalienable. But here's the problem. If you don't know them, you don't have them. Okay.
Well, yeah, you do, because nobody can take your rights away from you. They're like sticky balls. They're yours. You can't wave them. You can't sign them away. You can't give them away. They can't take them. They're yours.
You can.
Period.
No, you can't. No, you have the right to waive them.
Well, it depends. There are some rights in their system that you can't waive.
Well, yeah.
Take for instance, and this is an issue I'm dealing with right now. Dealing with secure equity interest of mortgage collateral.
Yeah.
Because what happens is after foreclosure, the roles of the trust change. Where you were a trustee, you come into beneficiary position, and they become trustee for the purpose of dispersing any inequities with regards to the collateral that was given, because they're not entitled to the property for the debt and the secure equity interest that you put into the property. So